Andrew Robillard told reporters he had no idea why he couldn't wear his Iron Man costume to his grandfather's funeral. Robillard, whose grandfather passed away this week after complications from a stroke, vented his frustration to reporters and noted that his grandpa, quote, probably wouldn't even care if he dressed like Iron Man at the funeral.
Iron Man is awesome. I want to wear my Iron Man suit. I am Iron Man.
And in tech news, a news website refers to its users' ceaseless exchange of racial slurs as a discussion. In other news, Guinness World Records promotes the man who can lift 27 pounds with his tongue to editor-in-chief. Thursday's cry is moved up to Wednesday due to a scheduling conflict, and a family watches in silence as Dad checks out the waitress.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Well, what is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network. I wanted to recap some stuff that happened over the break because we truly didn't do anything from Tuesday of last week. We did nothing related to politics. We didn't do a show on Wednesday.
That's what I'm saying. You said...
Well, yeah. So Wednesday until this morning, we did nothing related to politics. And
5 whole days.
It's pretty crazy. A lot can happen in 5 whole days, like gaining 7 or 8 pounds. That can happen. Depends on how many Thanksgiving dinners you had. Oh, I had some Fed Haters Club merch that was supposed to be here today. One of the items arrived damaged. So the mug, I ordered a coffee mug, but super simple. I filed a thing. I said, hey, it's arrived damaged. They said, oh, okay, we'll send you a new one. That was it. So there you go. Don't be afraid, folks. If one of our coffee mugs arrive damaged, they'll just send you a new one.
Look at that.
Problem solved.
Do you get to keep the damaged one?
You get to keep it. You can go to GodHatesFeds.com and get some of the merch. I put up a new shirt a couple days ago. I'm going to make it a goal right now to try and put up a new shirt design. Like, what do you think?
Have you done the Ron Paul was right one?
I worked on it for a while over the weekend. I even bought some new software to make, because I have an idea in my head for Ron Paul's face. And I can't find the setting I need to make Ron Paul's face look the way that I want it to look. And so I paid some money last night to try and make this shirt. And then I want to do the same thing for like an Ayn Rand shirt and for all of the greats out there. And so anyhow, it's in progress at the moment. But there's a lot of other great shirts over there at GodHatesFeds.com.
Yeah, perfect for Christmas gifts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And they, even though there's drop shipped, which means it's made to order, it arrives pretty quickly. So that it ships out like from the time you order, it'll ship out like the next day. So it's pretty fast overall. It's no Amazon Prime guaranteed 2-day delivery or anything, but it ships out pretty quickly. So what I wanted to do was go over some of the important things that happened over the break and just get everyone up to speed if you stayed away from politics like we did over this amount of time. One of the big things that happened is that there's a pause currently in the Israel-Hamas conflict, and they've been exchanging hostages / prisoners.
I saw that.
Israel calls them prisoners. Hamas calls them hostages. And so they've been exchanging those at roughly a 5 or 6 to 1 rate, which means everyone is freely admitting that an Israeli is about 6 times as valuable as a Palestinian person. So you just look at the exchange rate. It's all economics. And right now we're doing about 6 to 1 for the Israelis. So
you're saying people are commodities.
I'm just saying there's a market for everything, apparently. Anyway, Israel and Hamas are also open to extending the current pause. I was reading there have been about 200 aid trucks that have made their way into Gaza, trying to get them diesel fuel, stuff like that. I guess no bombing going on right now. Hamas has released 58 hostages over the past 3 days, including Thai and Philippine nationals. I believe there was an Israeli-American, like a dual citizenship, Israeli-American child that was released. And, it is good. These are hostages that don't need to be held hostage by Hamas right now. They're getting released, and there are people who are held in prison by Israel. And by some accounts, what I can tell, they also didn't need to be being held by Israel in prison either. And so it's nice to see a little break in the fighting, and they're potentially going to keep this going. I think they're open to like 10 hostages, Israeli hostages per day, is what Netanyahu said, that they'll continue this pause as long as they can keep getting 10 Israeli hostages per day. And then when that's over, they're just going to go right back to it. Just bombing people. So that's the deal
So
right
they
now.
paused for Thanksgiving?
It was kind of a Thanksgiving pause. They celebrate the death of the Native Americans over there too. So this was a clip here from CNN talking about the Palestinians that were released by Israel. 39 Palestinian teenagers were released from Israeli prisons on the third day of the Israel-Hamas truce. A bus carrying Palestinian teenagers released from Israeli prisons arrived in the center of West Bank City on Sunday. Earlier, Israel's prison service confirmed it released 39 prisoners and detainees from a total of 7 Israeli prisons as part of a deal between Israel and Hamas that also saw the militant group release hostages today. The group released Sunday included boys aged 18 and younger. 2 are 15, and 1, the youngest, released, is 14. They were welcomed by hundreds of well-wishers, some waving Palestinian flags, others carrying the flag of Hamas. When they arrived, some were detained without knowing their charge. This is the interesting part here. Because when we're fighting for Israel and peace and democracy and throwing our money towards these places, I do like to ask the question, okay, Israel has more Western values than a lot of the other countries in the region, right? I think we can probably accept that. But also they do some things that sound like they could be wrong and would violate pretty easily.
We did.
Yeah, we kind of do the same thing.
That Osama bin Laden pointed out.
He did. And we have this Bill of Rights, and it's not just this American law. It's the rights that we say human beings have because
They're natural.
they are on this planet, because they exist. They were endowed by whoever their creator is, whether it was Darwin or it was God or whoever it was, that they're endowed by their creator with natural rights, which means these people also have those same natural rights. And so when I see paragraphs like this, it's a little concerning. 16 of those released were serving sentences, mostly for attacks on Israelis, according to information drawn from the Israeli Prison Service and the Palestinian Prisoner Society, a non-governmental organization. The remaining 23 released have been held under administrative detention, a widely criticized practice in which a detainee is unaware of any charges against them, and their case is not subject to any legal process.
Like Guantanamo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's weird. Now, a little bit more context from the Washington Post on these people. There's been 300 prisoners on this list, I guess, that Hamas gave, or whoever it was. 17 were convicted of attempted murder. So this is some of the Palestinians. This list includes 123 minors under 18. 5 of them are 14. One was detained for throwing a pipe bomb, while others were detained for throwing Molotov cocktails or stones, according to the list. The list includes 33 women. The oldest among them is 59, charged with security violations. Some of the Palestinian prisoners were listed as having been affiliated with groups including Hamas, Fatah, Islamic Jihad, and the Popular Front, but a large number were not affiliated with a group and appeared to have acted on their own. A large number of the prisoners were arrested but not tried, with some in administrative detention without trial. The issue has long been a controversial topic for Israel, which has come under criticism by human rights groups. Let's see. They say they're holding 146 Palestinians age 18 and younger in detention or in prison on what the service called security grounds. Other organizations and rights groups cited the United Nations have estimated that hundreds of children are detained or prosecuted by the Israeli military each year. Some of those never get told why they've been arrested, and they never have a trial or anything. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, they're just in prison.
That's just a little bit weird, I would say.
Yeah.
Not saying that they didn't commit some act of violence, but I would say if they committed an act of violence, I think they would be charged with committing said act of violence. So, yeah, that's interesting. Netanyahu says that he welcomes the release of more hostages, but he will continue the war after the hostages are released. But he said he is open to extending the current pause, which was a 4-day pause in the fighting to celebrate Thanksgiving. And he said that he will keep this going as long as they keep releasing hostages. Towards the end of the hostages, the situation will become more dicey because Hamas is going to have to try to delay this if they want them to keep this pause going. So, once you start to run low on your bargaining power, it's going to get a little dicey. We'll see. And with all the aid that's coming in, I think it's beneficial for Hamas to keep this going for as long as possible because, of course, they plan on stealing all of the diesel fuel and all of the aid that comes into Gaza to help people. And so they want as much stuff to come in as possible so they can take it from the people who are supposed to be getting this aid right now, and they can keep their war going.
Well, Netanyahu says that his goal is to eliminate Hamas.
Mm-hmm. Whatever that means.
So that's the goal. Eliminate completely.
Does it count if they just change their name? Could they do it? Could they file for a name change?
I don't know.
You think?
I don't know
Does
how the
that count?
copyright laws work.
Someone might already trademark whatever name that they want to go with.
Yeah.
You got to get a new design. That
There's
could
a
be
legal
costly.
battle. Yeah.
Could be difficult. This could be tied up in court for quite a long time, honestly. All right, so that's one thing that happened over the break. Here's something that happened over the break. It's odd timing, by my estimation. We got the motivation for a mass shooter in Louisville, the guy that shot up the bank. I think his name was Connor Sturgeon or something like that, shot up a bank. And turns out he literally said that he shot up the bank to try and change gun laws.
Mm-hmm. Fight fire with fire, man.
Yeah. I mean, this should be a way bigger story than what it is, but since we have the media that we have, it's not going to be. So, what?
Magoo posted a GIF.
He hates these cans!
From the jerk.
More cans!
Stay away from the cans.
Stay away from the cans!
Die, gas pumper!
All right, go ahead, Charlie.
Good.
Let's learn about why this guy shot the place up.
All right. The man who shot and killed 5 people at a bank earlier this year in Louisville wanted to send a message about the need for gun control. Connor Sturgeon, who died April 10th in a firefight with Louisville police, left behind a journal that laid out his motives for the deadly attack, including his belief that killing, quote, upper-class white people would prompt tougher laws on firearms access. I have decided to make an impact. These people did not deserve to die, but because I was depressed and able to buy guns, they are gone, he said in an entry dated April 4th. Perhaps this is the impetus for change, upper-class white people dying. I certainly would not have been able to do this were it more difficult to get a gun, he wrote. His goals included no more me and stop gun violence, send a message to politicians. The handwritten writings were part of a 64-page report released Tuesday by the Louisville Metro Police Department that included photocopy images of notebook pages, as well as an April 5th selfie showing Sturgeon making a Joker face. Detective Kevin Carrillo, who wrote the report, said he believes the journal entries left behind by Connor Sturgeon are direct information to the planning and his mindset in the days leading up to the shooting, with his possible motives for his actions, including political issues surrounding corrupt politicians and lack of gun control. He was also unhappy.
Sorry, I skipped one.
Oh, sorry. He opened fire on his co-workers in a conference room at the Old National Bank, killing 5 and injuring 8. Those who died were these people. The gunman was shot in the head 8 minutes after the attack began by Officer Corey Galloway, who was able to take out the shooter despite being hit in the vest himself. His partner, rookie officer Nicholas Wilt, was struck in the head and hospitalized in critical condition. He was discharged from a rehabilitation center in July after more than 3 months of therapy. Got shot in the head and lived.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Lucky dude.
Certainly, Sturgeon had mental health issues. He was being treated for depression, including therapy and medication, and had voluntarily checked into a mental hospital last year after a suicide attempt during spring break in Florida. He was also unhappy with his banking job and wanted to take medical leave after suffering a panic attack. In his writings, he said he had nothing to live for, but that need to make an impact, affect change somehow on issues including climate disaster, gun access, and lack of mental health care. Quote, Dems get rich by doing nothing in the name of civility while they allow repubs to do whatever they want to whoever they want. A level of corruption that stands directly between us and progress. He expressed disgust with how easily he was able to obtain firearms, saying, quote, just walked in 45 minutes, get AR-15.
That's kind of a long time. It took me 15.
Mm-hmm.
That's quick.
Also, I like how he
for me
took out all the other words. Just walked in 45 minutes, get AR-15.
Yeah. Probably went to a gun show.
Yeah. I know our politicians are solely focused on lining their own pockets, but maybe this will knock some sense into them. If not, good luck. That was a week before the shooting.
Oh, that's the same thing there. Here's a good one there. Both of these are good, I guess.
Yeah. Even though he was planning to carry out a mass shooting, he blamed the NRA, saying it failed to show any regard for the value of human life. At the same time, he's the one deciding.
He is the one who did it.
It's so ridiculous. Quote, but let's not forget the most important player here, the one who made it all possible. Let's give it up for the NRA. I couldn't have done this without all of your lobbying dollars. You really brought this whole thing together. This is the world you are building, one without any regard for the value of human life. Who's the one that didn't have value for human life? The ones who took the human life? Like the guy who took the human life? Or an organization that advocates for the rights, well, sometimes advocates for the rights of people to be able to protect themselves.
Loosely advocates. Okay. It's a difficult one to explain, to try to wrap your mind around here, because I bet you there's some people on the left who would read this and be like, yeah, NRA, gun law should have stopped this madman from doing this. But also, if it wouldn't have been for all the wild leftist nonsense on guns, this guy wouldn't have done this. He was actually motivated by all of the crazy talk about people's gun rights. And that's why we literally have a shooter who wrote down in his manifesto, I'm going to assume lefty, whatever. Okay. Clearly crazy. Okay. We know that. Kind of a crazy dude. I don't think any sane people decide that they're just going to mass murder anyone. But he says, I am going to kill a bunch of people in an effort to get stronger gun control laws written in America. This is a conspiracy theory come to life right here, actually. How many times have we seen this? Like, oh, Dems sending shooters out there to kill people. That way they can take away our gun rights. And then we get a story. It's like, oh, dude, lefty shooter went out there and killed a bunch of people in order to take away people's gun rights. And we're like, oh, okay, well, Turkey coming up here in a couple days. So, this came out right before Thanksgiving.
You literally said that.
Yeah. That's why he did it.
But then also then he consciously thought about this for a long time and then still made the decision.
Yeah. And he blamed the NRA for allowing him to buy a gun. And
that he still had to load and pull the trigger.
And that's what these people don't get. It's like, it's the person who decided to go and do the thing. He was the person who could have stopped this shooting, not the gun laws, not the NRA lobbyist money. He could have stopped it, but because we've done such a good job at allowing people to blame everything on everyone else and be some kind of a victim in society and have so much hatred and division in our politics and all that, he was able to literally blame an organization that lobbies Congress and then still decided to load the gun and go to the place and kill people. He could have just not done it, but he wanted to make a political stand, I guess. And he thought that killing upper-class white people in a bank is what was going to do it, because people only care about white people getting killed, apparently. And that was proven wrong, apparently, because we didn't get any more specific laws pertaining to this event that took place.
Yeah. He also said something pretty important here, which is why our tagline for the show is life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning. He said, I have nothing to live for.
Mm-hmm.
The dude had no meaning or purpose in his life. And so why not be completely nihilistic and take out as many people as I possibly can while I know I'm going to be taken out myself?
Yeah.
Because he literally was saying, I'm ready to die. Why don't we kill a bunch of people on my way out?
He could have become an activist for his beliefs on this. I don't know how much time he spent trying to rally groups to go protest and being annoying as hell in public or whatever people who are protesting do. I don't know if he ever spent any time doing that. He could have somehow affected way more people in a positive manner than going and doing what he did this time. But he decided that what we need to change laws is another mass shooting, but killing upper class white people, I guess. It's pretty dumb, I would say. This should be in Dumb Bleep of the Week, but I think too many people died. So anyhow, any other thoughts on this joke?
I don't.
It should be a way bigger deal. I mean, this should be a political conversation.
Mm-hmm.
People on the left should be saying, hey, our supporters who want gun control laws, don't go out there and mass murder people in order to try and get gun control laws.
Yeah.
Let's band together.
Did their rhetoric lead to the death of these people?
I think this was incitement. This was incitement to.
Should they be
shooting.
held liable and complicit in this man's actions?
I mean,
he literally said climate change.
Yeah. What else did he say?
What else did he say?
Lack of mental health care.
Climate disaster, gun access, and lack of mental health care.
Now,
which is what the left talks about all the time.
How do you think he did at affecting climate change in this mass shooting?
Well, he took some people out, so those people can.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, less carbon emissions. Mm-hmm.
Those people can no longer drive their cars or have kids.
Yep. That bank is part of capitalism, and capitalism is what's destroying our climate. So I guess
capitalism backs the NRA.
He helped all those things. And we've just seen a wave of change sweep the nation after this mass shooting.
Dude literally was like, I'm going to fight mass shootings by committing a mass shooting.
Mm-hmm.
God.
And then eventually, what's interesting, let's take this to the extreme. What if all of our mass shootings were people doing this? And he'd be like, dude, you guys are the ones doing the mass shootings.
Right.
Yeah.
it's
just not a good idea. I would recommend anyone listening right now, don't commit a mass shooting. That's just my advice. Mm-hmm. Okay. Take it for what you will.
I recommend not to kill anyone.
Yeah, I don't think you should.
Yeah.
Definitely not a mass shooting and definitely not an AR-15. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are scarier than other guns. Did you see the stuff about the riots that took place in Ireland?
No.
Yeah. So there was
apparently Ireland has had an influx of
immigrants.
It
looks like.
Yeah.
So you did see
I saw some things about it. I did not see I did not see a riot.
Oh, they were.
I didn't know that they were protesting.
Well, you didn't see it because it was mostly peaceful.
Oh, okay.
You see this picture right there? That pole is doing just fine right there in the front. So it's a mostly peaceful.
Look at all those people over there. They're not on fire.
There's people climbing on the hood of a truck. All right. Oh, yeah.
Police car.
Looting at a Foot Locker, some stuff on fire. Coming up, we're going to continue this conversation and talk about a whole lot more on Liberty at Night.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Israel says 12 hostages released by Hamas on Tuesday are now in Israeli territory. They include 10 Israeli females, aged between 17 and 84, as well as 2 Thai nationals. It's the 5th day of the ceasefire, with a final day of prisoner swaps expected on Wednesday. It comes as CIA Director William Burns has held meetings in Qatar aimed at freeing more hostages from Gaza. He reportedly met with his Israeli and Egyptian counterparts as he steps up efforts to free the remaining Americans held by Hamas. 41 workers trapped for more than 2 weeks following a tunnel collapse in northern India have now been freed by rescuers. Teams managed to drill through boulders to reach the workers who were trapped in a tunnel under the Himalayas. FSN's Shiroshi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
It's after a long wait, rescue officials and the families of the workers trapped inside have let out a sigh of relief. The rescue mission initially hit several roadblocks and technical snags, with a lot of the machinery breaking down during the operation. Eventually, over the weekend, officials had to bring in rat miners who drilled through a narrow pipe and helped pull out the workers stuck inside. The men were given food, water, oxygen and medicines through narrow pipes, but it was the creation of an evacuation passage that took time.
US Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley received a boost on Tuesday with the endorsement of the Koch brothers, the first time that their organisation has backed a candidate ahead of primary season. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
She's described by AFP Action in its endorsement as someone who can turn the page and win, allowing the American people to move on from the current political era. The Conservative network claims its internal polling shows the former South Carolina governor and former ambassador to the United Nations is in the best position to defeat Donald Trump in the primaries, despite still trailing the former president as he vies for the Oval Office again.
Amazon has unveiled new chips that are designed to help customers train artificial intelligence models. It follows a similar announcement from Microsoft earlier this month as the race to develop custom silicon chips heats up. FSN's Ira Spitzer reports from Silicon Valley.
At its annual conference in Las Vegas, Amazon's AWS Cloud Unit announced the new Trainium 2 AI chip as well as the Graviton 4 processor. The company says both chips offer superior performance in the fast-growing market for training the large language models used for generative AI applications. It comes just weeks after Microsoft announced its own AI chip called Maya. Both companies are also partnering with the chipmaker NVIDIA to provide access to its chips, which are currently hard to come by due to high demand.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Dayton Chef back with Free Talk Live's Liberty at Night. This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction and has implemented really cool features to ensure it's undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their Chainlocks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering the Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. And a big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org. And let's get back into this conversation about the riots in Ireland. Overall, no matter what it is that you're mad about, I don't think I support going and looting people's private property or really any of the property. I don't think it's a real way to do anything unless you're going...
Well, who is rioting and why?
That is a great question. It seemed to be that people were upset about immigration, and that's why they were rioting. There was a stabbing spree that took place. 5 people were stabbed. 3 of them were children. I did not hear whether or not
Is that because he couldn't get a gun?
I guess, I don't know. Couldn't get a gun. They had the right amount of mass shooting manifestos to get rid of their guns, I guess. And so there's a stabbing spree. the word goes out that it was an immigrant, non-national, that did this. And as you've seen over across the pond, there's been quite an influx of immigrants into the country. And we do see a lot of videos on X pretty frequently showing that there's some unrest, that you get a video of crimes being committed. I don't know the numbers on this. I don't know if the crimes are being committed disproportionately by immigrants from some of these countries, more Arab nations, stuff like that. It seems to be. It's a complicated conversation because
it's complicated.
We're libertarians and I like immigration. You know, you're pretty open border libertarian. I'm a really big gate that like everyone can walk through, almost.
As long as they pass Nate Thurston's
test. As long as they pass my rules that I have. Okay, so we want people to come in, but then you see all these videos all the time where it's like these immigrants committing crimes. They came from Syria or name your country, and they come over and they are stabbing people and they're robbing people and raping and doing all this stuff. And I don't want to just believe that it's only immigrants doing these things in these countries. I think that there's a bit of
or that it's all of the immigrants.
Yeah, or all. Of course, it's probably
very few of them.
Probably a small percentage of the people that came over.
Statistically, none of them.
Yes, I'm sure that's true.
I believe last year, didn't Ireland have like 180,000 immigrants, I think, and just last year?
They had a thing, the number I saw was 65,000 they had agreed to take from somewhere, like refugees or whatever it was. But I don't know the total numbers for Ireland. I did minimal effort looking up the stuff for this. But I know that's why the riots happened. It was because that's supposedly what happened. Now, one thing on X I saw going around was people are upset that the news media branded this as far-right protests breaking out in Dublin. And you see this all over. There are people, they do the screenshots of all the different headlines, and it's always these far-right protests. And the thing that you're supposed to say is, oh, so you got to be on the far right if you hate kids getting stabbed, you know, that makes you far right. The problem is there's a little bit more nuance in it. Not that I'm going to be on the side of the news media here, but the people weren't out there protesting against kids getting stabbed. They were protesting against their immigration laws. That is what they were protesting against. Okay, that's why they were mad. If it would have just been Conor McGregor out there and he stabbed some people, I don't think there would have been riots afterwards because they hated kids getting stabbed. Okay, because they have such a kid stabbing amount, you know, high amounts of that happening. So epidemic.
Well, they're saying that the kid stabbing wouldn't have happened if there was immigration.
Basically, they saw a crime committed by allegedly an immigrant to the country, and that this shows that they have to do something about taking in all these people from these other countries. I think there's a very delicate argument to be made. Very, very delicate argument when you look at stuff like this. Like,
are you going to say it?
No.
Say it.
I'm not going to say it.
Say it.
I think that there is a viable conversation you can have about the culture of like a society like Ireland, you know, and you got this culture there. Does it ever make any sense for the people who live there to be worried that it's going to get, God bless America, our freaking way that we talk about things makes you just afraid to say whatever, you know? Is there ever a reason that the people in the
Ireland's
country
going to get too brown?
Is there ever a reason they'd be worried that their culture is going to become outnumbered and that they're going to lose it and they're going to vote to throw away everything that made their country a country because the United States decided to bomb some countries, essentially? Yeah. Like, let's not forget our part in this. Okay. And so I wonder if that's ever something that a legitimate conversation to be had.
So you're a white Irish nationalist?
No, I'm not. I don't care what happens in those places. At the end of the day, when I ask myself these questions, it just comes down to you have to prosecute the laws that you have. Like if there's crimes being committed, people need to be prosecuted. They need to get in trouble for it. And that's the way that the society is supposed to work. Like if you come from another country where you got Sharia law and you decide to put a jihad Sharia on your wife or something like that, and you just get prosecuted under the law. And people learn that you can't just go jihad on people in other countries.
Like the guy who stabbed kids, that's against the law.
It is. And so he'll get arrested just like anyone else would have. And there you go.
But I'm sure he's not the first guy to stab kids in Ireland.
No, he's also not the immigrant that they thought he was in the first place. That seemed to be a little bit of fake rumor news going around. We'll talk about that here in a second. One thing I do disagree when it comes to all this is Conor McGregor's under investigation for online hate speech. Ireland, they got some tough laws over there. We played some videos from Ireland before talking about your free speech and your rights and stuff like that. They're not too big on those things over there.
I was seeing some videos about people talking about how Ireland has elected a government that hates white people, apparently.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to destroy white people is what they're saying, which I find, I mean, come on.
One of the quotes I saw going around was one of the guys got up there and said that basically there were too many white people in their government and that they needed to have better representation.
Diversify.
And they needed to diversify. And then the statistic was like Ireland is 99% white.
Yeah.
So what are we doing here?
Right.
Let's talk about Conor. Violent riots erupted in Ireland's capital on Thursday after the alleged assailants stabbed 5 people, including 2 adults and 3 children, as young as 5 years old.
Now, what's weird, though, when it is a far right thing, it's a riot.
Yeah.
If this was like a BLM protest, it'd be mostly peaceful protest.
Mostly peaceful protest.
Yeah. But that looked just like the BLM protest to me.
Kind of did. I had to check to make sure those weren't video from Minneapolis.
Very similar videos.
But this was a far right riot.
Yeah. Okay.
The night of violence.
By the way, they're both riots.
Yes.
Yeah.
The night of violence resulted in the arrest of at least 34 of the reported 500 rioters, most of them were peaceful. Okay. Some of whom set a bus and police car ablaze and damaged multiple buildings as officials suspended all public transport in the city. Irish Garda Commissioner Drew Harris labeled the Dublin riots as disgraceful scenes caused by a hooligan faction driven by far-right ideology. But the police commissioner's remarks were met with harsh criticism from the UFC superstar, who said innocent children ruthlessly stabbed by a mentally deranged non-national in Dublin, Ireland today. McGregor said, "Our chief of police had this to say in the riots in the aftermath. Drew, not good enough. There is grave danger among us in Ireland that should never be here in the first place. And there has been zero action done to support the public in any way, shape, or form with this frightening fact. Not good enough. Make change or make way. Ireland for the victory. God bless those attacked today, we pray." In the month of May, down by the bay. After his initial...
Wait, so this is hate speech? This is being investigated for hate speech?
Let's see. There could be some more hateful speech, or at least incite of hatred in people's hearts. I don't know. After his initial remarks, McGregor emphasized he did not condone the Dublin riots, stolen property and destruction, or any attacks on first responders. Quote, "Last night, scenes achieved nothing toward fixing the issues we face."
He said this. He wrote this in an accent.
He did.
The Irish accent.
I can't do it. I do understand frustrations, however, and I do understand a move must be made to ensure the change we need is ushered in. And fast. I am in the process of arranging. Believe me, I am way more tactical, and I have backing. There will be change in Ireland. Mark my words.
Now get to my fucking belt.
Overall, I would say he's upset with the immigration policies of Ireland. And man, do you think okay, I'm never going to be in favor of any law that says certain people can't come to the country. Like I would never back that. That sounds racist to me, or xenophobic, or Islamophobic, or phobic. I'm scared of being scared of stuff. Okay. But you know, all these countries that we look at, these small, like Sweden or something, just say we look at Sweden and you're like, oh, look at their outcomes when it comes to this, this, and this. And what someone will say is, well, they got a very homogenous society. You know, they've got, this is their culture and these are the people, and you look and it's 124% the same brand of person that's in this country. Is that true? Is there something to be said for having segregated culture?
Partially true.
You think?
I would say. I mean, it does bring about problems when you have traditions clashing.
Yeah.
Different
cultures clashing with each other.
Look at Israel Palestine.
Yeah.
I mean,
true.
They're at all out war.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, and it's because humans,
different morals clashing, yeah.
Humans have this biological need for safety, and they view things that don't look like them or act like them.
We default to tribalism. That's like the most default thing that happens.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It does happen. Yeah. Now, we found a way, I believe, in the United States to be mostly peaceful. That is true. It's mostly peaceful when we have several different cultures.
A lot of different ones.
But what's interesting is when you look at somewhere like New York, right? Look at New York. Okay. All those different cultures kind of assimilate to their own few blocks.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
You have Chinatown, you have a place where the Irish, you have a place where the Italians are.
They still want to live close to other people that are like them.
Even in the same city, they still is factionate a word? They still
fractionate.
They fractionate into factions of their own little groups inside of the same city. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Nashville has the same thing. Everyone knows where Mexico is in Nashville. Okay. And I'm not saying that to be racist. I'm just saying like a big group of them all live in the same place.
Look and we have, what's the place in Michigan? Is it like Dearborn, Michigan?
We have
or one
super
of those places
mercados that actually says that on the sign in certain places in Nashville where there's a large population of Hispanics that they're all together because they want to go to their supermercado versus Target or whatever. They don't shop at Kroger. They go to Rocero's supermercado. Huh. What? They do.
No, it's true.
It's true. Saying it. Okay? That's typically what happens.
So you think that's easier to do in a country that's as big as America where people can...
I don't know if it's easier. I'm just explaining there's this biological tribal nature that human beings have. You see it in the animal kingdom too. Man.
Well, when you're talking about people from Mexico...
Go be a lion and try to cross over into another lion's territory.
Yeah.
Okay? They'll send the troops, man.
They will. They don't like it.
And it's because you're an outsider. They don't know you.
A lot of it, I think, has to do with a common language.
I'm not saying it's right.
Common language, common culture, traditions, and you just feel more comfortable surrounded by people who speak the same language that you do.
But you also have an idea of how that person's going to act. So you feel safe. Okay? If you have no idea what that person's going to do, you have to be on guard. Right? Because you're vulnerable to attack. You're vulnerable to being stabbed. You're vulnerable. And so when people don't look like you or talk like you or act like you, then you're on guard. And it makes sense. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it makes biological sense. We have to take that all into account, and we should be able to have these conversations. That's how we move forward. That's how we actually bring people who don't look alike together.
Here's the problem. Like, the answer is we all have the same laws that we have to act within. Like that we have the same set of rules that we all are under. And when you bring in someone from another, say they come from Syria or whatever, you bring in someone who thinks that Sharia law should be the law of the land. Okay, well, if they act in accordance with Sharia law, they need to be prosecuted under American law still. And hopefully people will learn that lesson over time. Sharia law is kind of an extreme example. But if you take it something a little bit lighter, what happens when there is a tipping point in the voting base and you've got more people who think the law should be a little bit different because the people end up voting in the people who make the laws. And so is there like a natural worry you would have that eventually you're going to get enough people come in and they're going to put enough people in power that they're actually going to change the system, the way that the country operates?
Which is why you shouldn't be allowed to make laws that supersede.
You should only have laws
rights.
About people who hurt people or take their stuff, like physically hurt people, and remove liberties away from other people. That's the problem when you give people positive rights and you take things away from one person to give it to another. Now let's look at a couple clips here because, as I said, Ireland's not great when it comes to this whole free speech thing. Here is their Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, whatever, how you want to say it. I can't say it in an Irish accent. Sorry. Here's him talking about how they need to update their laws in accordance with the
Before you get to that, though, I think Magoo's right from the Fed Haters Club, which you can join by going to joingml.com. He said maybe this guy was just trying to get harsher knife laws passed in Ireland.
No, we'll have to see. We'll have to see his manifesto in like six or 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll figure out what that
Kinda
was.
like the guy in America.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe he didn't think Ireland's knife laws were strict. He could just go to a store, get knife, and kill children.
Or maybe he thought there were too many immigrants in Ireland.
Go store, get knife.
He was unhappy with their immigration policies.
Children dead.
Actually, that's what it was. Okay, here's what this PM is saying.
We're going to make sure that we make those changes to our laws in the next couple of weeks to allow the Gardaí to use that evidence and go through that evidence and identify the people who are involved in these actions, and we are going to get them. In addition to that, I think it's now very obvious to anyone who might have doubted it that our incitement hatred legislation is just not up to date. It's not up to date for the social media age, and we need that legislation through, and we need it through within a matter of weeks, because it's not just the platforms who have a responsibility here, and they do. There's also the individuals who post messages and images online that stir up hatred and violence, and we need to be able to use laws to go after them individually as well.
Mm-hmm. Incitement to hatred. Not even just hatred, like incitement to hatred, not incitement to violence, incitement to hatred. You can't post a meme that might lead to someone not liking a certain person or whatever. Certain group of people.
Yeah.
It's illegal.
The problem here is freedom of speech.
That is the main problem.
Yeah.
Is that people are freely thinking. We played this clip before, but here's a member of the Green Party. This was, I think, on a Dumb Bleep of the Week one time. This is how they do things up there.
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here.
Actually, she's right about that. All laws, all legislation are about restriction of freedom. It's pretty true.
We are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our Constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good.
If you make someone feel bad.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Great stuff. Way to go. Way to go over there in Ireland.
She seems like she's that mom at school, you know, that's getting on to Timmy for making her son Johnny feel bad about his handwriting. And so Johnny should go to jail for that.
Let me see. Authorities reportedly have launched an investigation into the mixed martial arts fighter about Conor McGregor as part of an inquiry into the dissemination of so-called online hate speech. According to the Sunday Times, the investigation...
Based on what he said.
Yep. The investigation, because he could have incited hatred against other people by saying that your guess is as good as mine. Okay. The investigation comes as Irish officials have reportedly started preparing to pass radical legislation concerning the public speech law, which historically has lacked a consistent definition. He recently told media that the lawmakers should immediately pass legislation. The next few weeks.
Stir up hatred and violence. Seems like Argentina's a better place to move to than Ireland.
There is a couple other things. We're not losing any more of our women and children, the sick and twisted people who should not even be in Ireland in the first place. There's the hatred coming in.
Yeah.
There's that video. Oh, Dublin mass stabbing suspect is a naturalized citizen who's been in Ireland for decades, according to the police. So there was that little tidbit too. So he's not white, from what I can tell, according to the reporting, but he has been in Ireland for decades, meaning it's not exactly the people that everyone is upset about, like all the recent refugees and immigrants and stuff coming from U.S. wars that have been forced out of their countries and are going to safer places or anything like that. someone who's been there for 20 years or so, at least.
Yeah, and he had access to assault knives.
That's the problem. He probably wrote about it. Like, how did I get this knife?
Because Ireland has pretty strict gun laws.
So
this guy was still able to mass murder people.
I will look more into some of the rates of crime in these countries that have large influxes of immigration. I didn't look into that for this conversation. We'll do a bigger conversation where we can really unpack some of the dicey things that we were thinking about saying during this show.
That was a rhetorical question, Nate. She already had the answer.
Oh, yeah. It's yes. But I would like to actually have the data. If I say anything, I'm more relying on the echo chamber of Twitter showing me specific videos about things happening. But I don't exactly get a video of an Irish person stabbing someone. But I would see a video of a Syrian person stabbing someone. That's just the way it works.
I think Jordan Peterson talks about the actual, like the underneath problem with this. He does a really good job of explaining that it's actually a miracle that you go outside and the world's not on fire. Right? He talks about it. It's like, it's amazing that we can all sit in this theater, thousands of us together, and we're not tearing each other to pieces like chimps, because that's what chimps do. That's what he says. And then, so you actually start thinking about that. It's like, we do have this, again, we have this like biological nature where if people don't look like us or talk like us or act like us, then we don't know what they're capable of, right? They could be capable of stabbing us, or they could be capable of becoming our best friend. We don't know. So of course, like,
that also goes for people who do look like us.
True. True. But Nate, when you're walking through the mall, let me just ask you a question right now. When you're walking through a mall, okay?
Yeah.
And you're just walking by. Do you notice all these people who don't have tattoos on their face? Or do you notice the guy who's jacked, he's got a couple teardrops? He could be white, but got a couple teardrops, jacked, walking around the mall. Do you kind of avoid that guy a little bit more than you would the other people who don't have tattoos on their face? Answer honestly.
Okay, I will answer honestly. I avoid everyone to the fullest extent, so I don't have any frame of reference here. But yeah, sure. Okay.
You would.
All right, we got some interviews and some more great content coming right up on Liberty at Night with Nate and Chuck on the Free Talk Live Network.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. Israel says 12 hostages released by Hamas on Tuesday are now in Israeli territory. They include 10 Israeli females, aged between 17 and 84, as well as 2 Thai nationals. It's the 5th day of the ceasefire, with a final day of prisoner swaps expected on Wednesday. It comes as CIA Director William Burns has held meetings in Qatar aimed at freeing more hostages from Gaza. He reportedly met with his Israeli and Egyptian counterparts as he steps up efforts to free the remaining Americans held by Hamas. 41 workers trapped for more than 2 weeks following a tunnel collapse in northern India have now been freed by rescuers. Teams managed to drill through boulders to reach the workers who were trapped in a tunnel under the Himalayas. FSN's Shiroshi Mukherjee reports from New Delhi.
It's after a long wait, rescue officials and the families of the workers trapped inside have let out a sigh of relief. The rescue mission initially hit several roadblocks and technical snags, with a lot of the machinery breaking down during the operation. Eventually, over the weekend, officials had to bring in rat miners who drilled through a narrow pipe and helped pull out the workers stuck inside. The men were given food, water, oxygen and medicines through narrow pipes, but it was the creation of an evacuation passage that took time.
US Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley received a boost on Tuesday with the endorsement of the Koch brothers, the first time that their organisation has backed a candidate ahead of primary season. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
She's described by AFP Action in its endorsement as someone who can turn the page and win, allowing the American people to move on from the current political era. The Conservative network claims its internal polling shows the former South Carolina governor and former ambassador to the United Nations is in the best position to defeat Donald Trump in the primaries, despite still trailing the former president as he vies for the Oval Office again.
Amazon has unveiled new chips that are designed to help customers train artificial intelligence models. It follows a similar announcement from Microsoft earlier this month as the race to develop custom silicon chips heats up. FSN's Ira Spitzer reports from Silicon Valley.
At its annual conference in Las Vegas, Amazon's AWS Cloud Unit announced the new Trainium 2 AI chip as well as the Graviton 4 processor. The company says both chips offer superior performance in the fast-growing market for training the large language models used for generative AI applications. It comes just weeks after Microsoft announced its own AI chip called Maya. Both companies are also partnering with the chipmaker NVIDIA to provide access to its chips, which are currently hard to come by due to high demand.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the imminent release of Oscar Pistorius. The Paralympic athlete is to be freed from prison in South Africa in January after serving half his 13-year sentence for the murder of his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp. He shot her in his home in 2014. In South Africa, inmates are eligible for parole halfway through their sentences if they meet certain criteria, even if they are convicted of grievous bodily violence, GBV. Sisham Samai is an attorney and activist and director of the Women's Legal Centre in Cape Town.
What actually happened to Reeva was it's femicide. And we need to be able to understand that South Africa, being known for having one of the highest rates of femicide in the world. And so I do understand that our system allows for parole. However, we need to be able to also see what message does it really send out into our communities and into the country. GBV remains a massive challenge in this country, femicide in particularly. And we know that conviction rates is less than 7% in terms of sexual offences, even though the state would indicate that it's much higher.
Pistorius will go free on January the 5th. The Steenkamp family has raised questions about whether he may still be a threat to society. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, Israel says 12 hostages released by Hamas on Tuesday are now in Israeli territory. They include 10 Israeli females as well as 2 Thai nationals. 41 workers trapped for more than 2 weeks following a tunnel collapse in India have now been freed by rescuers. And the Koch brothers are backing Nikki Haley's bid for the White House, a boost for the woman who's hoping to become the first US female president. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
Researchers at Princeton University's Department of Sociology have made a major leap in our understanding of social interaction.
We conducted trials in 90 supermarkets across the country and found that essentially 100% of people disapproved of having a stranger hit them across the face and then expose their genitalia right in the middle of the supermarket, which we found very interesting.
Researchers observed similar reactions when the subject hurled shopping carts toward unsuspecting shoppers, stood in the deli section rubbing cold cuts against his chest, or got right near cashier's ears and began loudly singing Yankee Doodle.
In this particular trial, we had our subject, Kevin, take off his shirt, tape a banana to his forehead, and charge at various shoppers like he was a rhino. Within 20 minutes, store owners called the police and he was arrested, allowing us to come to the conclusion that this type of behavior is still considered at least somewhat taboo.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. What's up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. And this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction and has implemented really cool features to ensure it's undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their chain locks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Big thanks to Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. That's dash.org. So Charlie's not here for this current conversation. I am joined by author Alexandra Hudson. We'll be talking about her new book. It's called The Soul of Civility, Timeless Principles that Heal Society and Ourselves. How are you doing today, Alexandra?
I'm great, Nate. Thanks for having me.
As we were just talking, you're traveling right now. You pulled over so you could talk to us. You're currently on a book tour, so if anyone hears any background noise or whatever, that's what's happening. I recommend you watch the video, though, so you can see all the beautiful scenery behind you out there. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this, and just so you know, I guess everyone who's listening will find this out, but this sounds like a good episode for us to release on or around Thanksgiving. So we're not going to release it immediately today, but I think around Thanksgiving, talking about being thankful and kindness and all that, maybe that's the time that this should be released. But tell everyone a little bit about yourself and about your book.
So, my name is Alexandra Hudson. I am passionate about beauty, goodness, and truth, and reviving the wisdom of the past to help us lead better lives today. And that's very much the ethos of our book, reviving the timeless principles human flourishing, how thoughtful people, how to do this thing called life together across deep difference. How might we thrive across deep difference? That is the most important question of our day. That's the question my book explores. This is a defining question of the classical liberal project of a democracy. How do we overcome the worst parts of our nature, our self-love, and thrive in community and relationship with others? As I learned while writing this book, though, this is actually the defining human question. How do we contribute to this, the human social project and become our best selves and accomplish more together in community than individually? And I learned firsthand the importance of this topic of our divided moment when I was working in government. I was at the U.S. Department of Education in a very divided moment, 2017 to 2018, and left deeply divided after a deeply divided moment and a very discouraging experience, and desperately wanted to be a part of the solution. Just kind of the origin story of this book. I was in this environment of anti-human flourishing, and so I wrote a book on the timeless principles of human flourishing as a result of that.
So speaking on civility, I definitely think that's something we're lacking these days. Something just happened a couple days ago at the time that we're recording this, where we almost had a fight break out during a Senate hearing. And I'll be honest with you, I feel guilty about it, but I kind of wanted to see it play out. So maybe I'm part of the problem. But
well, it's funny. It wouldn't be the first time that violence broke out in the House of on the floors of Congress. In fact, in the 1890s. There was a murder on the steps of the Capitol. There was this congressperson, Tolby, William Tolby. He had been exposed by a journalist for his extramarital affair. A guy named Charles Kincaid had written about this affair, and he resigned in disgrace. His political career was over, and Tolby, the congressman, after he was resigned, he stalked and bullied the journalist Charles Kincaid for years. Like anytime, actually, it's really interesting. The same day that this fight almost broke out a few days ago on the Senate floor, Kevin McCarthy was accused of, I think it was confirmed, of elbowing his political opponent in the kidney. Like actual physical violence, and that's exactly what happened. Kincaid. Tolby, stepped on Kincaid's foot. He would punch him, shove him into walls, like elbow him. Like he was just like physically a bully and harassed this journalist for, ending his career. And one day, Charles Kincaid had enough, and he went to, after one assault from the congressman, he came to the floors of to the steps of Congress and shot him in the head.
Wow!
And he was acquitted, in fact, because everyone knew so widely of the congressperson's like tyrannical bullying treatment of this poor journalist. And the moral of that story is that civilization is fragile, democracy is fragile, peaceful coexistence between our fellow citizens is fragile. It's not a foregone conclusion. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he wrote in his Gulag Archipelago that the line between good and evil runs through every human heart, but the line between civilization and barbarism, of peaceful coexistence and war and violence and conflict, that goes through every human heart as well. And we underappreciate the role we each have in preserving peace and prosperity in our society today.
So I did not know that story about someone actually getting murdered on the steps. I was told that this problem all started with President Trump, and that's where things really, that's what I had heard. And so you're saying, has this been a problem before 2016?
This is absolutely a core argument of my book, that this is not an America problem. This is not a now problem, not a modernity problem. This is certainly not a Donald Trump problem. There's no question he, coarsened our public discourse and certainly didn't help. But this is a timeless human problem. This is a problem of the human condition. As long as we've been around as a species, we've been doggedly social. We yearn for relationship. We want to be in community with others. And yet morally and biologically, we're driven to meet our own needs before others. And that is why this thing called life together, civilization, democracy, friendship is always fragile. Again, never a foregone conclusion. And it lives and dies on our daily decisions, minute by minute decisions, to overcome the self-love in our nature, to not let our baser instincts win out in a given moment, a given exchange, and for the sake of peace and harmony and a thriving human social project.
So it might seem to some of us like things are getting worse than they've ever been. Although when you think about it in historical context, it's not like anyone's challenging someone to a duel or anything. So maybe things are better. Do you think things have gotten worse recently, or is it just more out there in the open with social media and the news and all that?
This is a timeless problem of the human condition. But there are epiphenomena. There are new things about our life today that have contributed to this problem and have made it feel particularly acute and are in fact new challenges. For example, the ubiquity of the 24/7 news cycle, the fact that we are geographically and digitally siloed. We don't actually have to interact with people we don't want to interact with if we don't want to. So social media that allows people to, Churchill had this great line 70 years ago. He said, the truth gets halfway around a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. And that was 70 years ago, but before the age of social media. And that's all the more the case now, where one person's mistruth, one person's vitriol can now affect millions in seconds. That is novel. That is new. That the core problem in our nature, the social and the selfish, that's a timeless problem. But now the baser parts of ourselves, of the human condition, can now are amplified because of these novel technologies. But you'll be interested to know, as I surveyed this question and this genre of civility manuals, ethical handbooks from across history and culture, it's funny that every single society tends to feel like they're living in the most uncivil moment. So this is not a new phenomenon. It tends to be a part of the human condition to complain about kids these days, to complain about corrupt politicians, that this is not a new phenomenon.
So what I wonder is, how is, this is a libertarian podcast, and we talk about things that are going wrong every single day, and we talk about how high the stakes are. And I wonder if it's possible to be civil with people and have civil discourse when we also have the political rhetoric that is out there. Maybe we help with some of that, but when the stakes are so high for people, when bad economics can kill people, or when wars can kill people, and then also we have to turn around and try to be nice to people at the same time that you think are doing terrible things, like how do we work that out?
Well, two things. One, I argue in my book that there's an essential distinction between civility and politeness. So I learned this firsthand when I was in government. When I got to government, I saw these two extremes. On one hand, there were people who were bullies, who were hostile, aggressive, abrasive. They had sharp elbows. They were willing to step on anyone to get ahead. On the other hand, there were people who I thought were my people. They were polished and poised and polite, but I learned that these were the people who would smile at me one moment and then stab me in the back the next. And that clarified for me this essential distinction between civility and politeness. That politeness is manners, it's etiquette, it's external, it's behavior, it's a technique. Whereas civility is a disposition of the heart. It's a way of seeing others as our moral equals who are worthy of a bare minimum of respect just by virtue of our shared moral status as members of the human community. And that crucially, sometimes civility, actually respecting someone, requires being impolite. It requires breaking the rules of propriety and etiquette, telling hard truths, engaging in robust debate, even protesting. I recover the whole tradition of civil disobedience in my definition of civility, that sometimes it's a duty of citizenship to stand up against unjust laws that degrade equal treatment under the law, personhood, and human dignity. These core ideas of the classical liberal project, of the American democratic project. And I reclaim, Thoreau, Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As part of this tradition, to help clarify and to make the case that we need less tone policing, less etiquette and niceness in society right now, and more true civility, more willingness to offend people in the name of telling a hard truth that's actually respecting someone, not patronizing them by papering over a difference and pretending a difference doesn't exist. That's not actually respecting someone.
That can be really difficult when the truth seems to be very subjective for some people sometimes. So you could say, I'm being civil by telling the truth and by debating you on this, but they could say, well, that's not the truth. What I think is true is the truth, and I'm being civil by actually telling you what the truth is right now. So that all seems to get really difficult. And what I find really hard is, let's say I decide to treat everyone completely civil and honor their opinions and do all that, which I try to do. It's tough to do when you feel like you're the only one doing it and there's no reciprocal nature, right? This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We're coming up towards the end of the year holiday season. Personally, I do look forward to it, but it can be pretty stressful. There's a lot of scheduling that you have to do with different family. Maybe they live around the globe. Maybe you're missing a loved one this year. Adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings that you're having. Therapy can be a bright spot. amid all that stress that you're going through. Something to look forward to, make you feel grounded, give you the tools to manage everything that's going on. I've done therapy in the past. It was very helpful and life-changing just to talk through some of these things with people and learn how to deal with things as they come up. Charlie has used BetterHelp for years, so if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/GML today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/GML.
It's a great question, and it's a variation on this timeless question of philosophy. Like, how can you be a good person in an unjust world, in a world full of bad people? And we hear this rhetoric a lot today that, nice guys finish last, and the stakes are too high to be nice and decent to the other side. The other side is too bad, too wrong, too morally evil to respect or be decent to. And the stakes are so high, we have to be willing to take the gloves off and be willing to do and say anything to get ahead. And unfortunately, a symptom of this apocalyptic rhetoric that we see across the political spectrum is the tendency to dehumanize the other. This is a tendency that we do as human beings when the stakes feel high, in times of election, in times of war, when it feels like there's an existential threat where our identity, our way of life is at stake. We feel a tendency to dehumanize the other so that we feel justified in doing whatever is necessary in order to win. And that's a problem for democracy and for a free and flourishing society that is founded on basic human dignity and equality under the law. We can't be willing to suspend the rules of decency for the sake of a greater good. I mean, if there was ever a time to suspend, civility and respect for dignity, it would have been in the fight against slavery and the fight against segregation. And even some of the most prominent abolitionists knew that they could not suspend respect for personhood in the name of a greater good, of equality for all. That in doing so, they would be undermining the exact ideals that they were fighting for. They couldn't say we're fighting for equality of all persons while undermining the dignity of some people along the way. And so Dr. King, that was central to Dr. King's philosophy. Frederick Douglass, William Lloyd Garrison, they knew that they had to respect the dignity of all persons on the way to pursuing equality for all.
So would you give that same explanation to someone who would say straight to your face, Trump is Hitler? And if we don't stop him, then we're going to have Hitler. And you know how bad that was. How receptive to this message do you think some people are going to be?
I'm really sympathetic to people who say that when we analogize modern leaders to Hitler, like, we diminish the evil that Hitler committed. Yeah. It really cheapens the mass murder and atrocities and the 6 million Jews and the 12 million people that were annihilated under the Third Reich when we analogize modern leaders that day. I think that's really a monstrous tendency. But I think, that tendency and that temptation to do that is a symptom of just how apocalyptic and how high stakes our current moment has come to feel. One thing I will say is that people insufficiently appreciate that when we are willing to take the gloves off and do anything in order to beat the other side, own the libs, whatever it is, that we underappreciate that we don't just hurt the other, we hurt ourselves too. Dr. King is great on this. He was getting this from Socrates. Socrates said that virtue is its own reward. Being good, gracious, generous, just. That's health of the soul, and that's its own reward. Vice, a vicious soul, and the symptoms of a vicious soul are viciousness towards others. That's its own punishment, and that people who are vicious and cruel and malicious and unjust, they don't deserve our vitriol. They don't deserve our disdain. They deserve our compassion because they're clearly sick and they're clearly suffering, whether or not they acknowledge it. And Dr. King borrowed this idea from Socrates in his letter from Birmingham jail when he talked about segregation. He said that segregation doesn't just hurt the segregated, it hurts the segregator as well. It deforms their soul, he says. And this is actually where I get the title of my book, The Soul of Civility. It deforms their soul by inflating their sense of self. They have an inaccurate sense of the other by thinking that the other is inferior to them, and they have an inaccurate sense of self because they think that they're better than others, and it deforms their soul. And so just as segregation hurts both parties, so does incivility. When we're cruel to another human being, we obviously hurt the other human being, but we also deform our own souls too. And just as incivility is mutually harmful, acts of charity, grace, kindness, compassion, hospitality, especially important as we get into the holidays, that is mutually ennobling. It's mutually beneficial, and it's mutually beautiful. It cultivates the humanity and humaneness of both parties.
And so where does this need to start? Does it need to start with people in the government or people in the media, or does it need to start in society itself, in the population, and then filter up into those positions?
A defining attribute of our current moment is our tendency to blame. If we're blaming someone else, we're not responsible, we're not culpable. We feel justified. We feel it inflates our sense of self-righteousness. And yet, my theory of social change in the book is hyper-individual, micro, local level. I didn't write this book for public leaders, for the intelligentsia. I hope they read it. So anyone listening to this, feel free to send a copy to your local public servant. I wrote it for everyday Americans who are exhausted and frustrated by the division in our world right now and desperately want to be a part of the solution.
Okay.
When I left a hostile... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Keep going.
When I left a hostile environment in government, I call myself a refugee from federal government. I came home from work one day and said to my husband, I'm done with DC, I'm done with government, let's move to Indiana. And Indiana is his home state where he's from originally. And my husband said, okay, great, sounds good. No take backs. And so we moved there a few months later, and we've been there 5.5 years. One of my first friends when we moved to Indianapolis, her name was Joanna Taft. She came up to me one day and said, hi, I'm Joanna. Would you like to porch with us sometime? And I never heard the word porch used as a verb before, but I was curious, so we didn't know many people in town, so we went to her porch that day, and I realized that Joanna is staging this quiet porching revolution from her great big front veranda. She had curated people across race, across politics, across social class, geography in town, not to have a curated, structured conversation about differences, but just to inhabit a shared space and to sow seeds of trust and friendship that might one day provide a fertile ground for productive conversation across difference. But that is one challenge of our moment right now. There is no basic affection. There is no respect or trust. And that's why we're not doing dialogue or life together across difference well at all. And that's what's so beautiful and revolutionary about Joanna's front porch, that she's creating this little oasis, this place where people can feel seen and known and loved, and not essentialized and reduced to one aspect of who they are, who they vote for, what their skin color is. And Joanna also was reclaiming her civic sphere. She's saying, I can't control what journalists are writing about and what politician is tweeting what, or who's elbowing who in the kidney, I am going to focus on what I can control. And I'm going to make my community better and stronger. And that's exactly what she's doing. And when I was a Novak journalism fellow, I reported on this phenomenon across the country, that people with and without front porches are reclaiming their civic sphere. And they're saying, I can't control what's happening around me, but I can control myself. And I'm going to be part of the solution right where I am. And we have way more power than we realize as Americans. This is a core message from my book, that the beauty of a democracy is that the citizen is prior to the regime. And that if we want change, we can be changed and demand change from right where we are. And there's power in that. We have way more power as everyday citizens than we realize to be part of this solution. It's way too complex and way too intractable. No single politician, no technology has caused it, right? This is a timeless human problem. No policy, no politician, no single book is enough to solve this issue as well, that it has to be organic and spontaneous and voluntary. It can't be micromanaged, it can't be legislated. It has to be organic, spontaneous, voluntary from every one of us at the local level to be a part of the solution.
Well, tell your friend Joanna she needs to write a book on porching, because that might be the revolution that we need.
I wrote that book. That's my book. There you go.
Okay. All right. You got the porching book. All right. Alexandra, thank you so much for your time. I want to let you get back on the road on that book tour.
Such a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Hope you all enjoyed that interview with Alexandra. Hudson, and make sure you check out her book on Amazon or wherever you get books, The Soul of Civility. Make sure you check out our daily podcast, Good Morning Liberty, or go to our website, goodmorningliberty.us. We'll be right back with more.
Everything you're already doing still isn't enough? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. When you're shopping bricks and mortar, ask for an open box. I saved a couple $100 on the computer I'm writing this on. Still brand new and under warranty. Shopping online? Before you check out that cart, open a separate browser and Google promo codes for the company you're shopping. And if you're a member, try AAA or AARP. Shopping for services? On vacation, I flossed off a crown, and the nearest dentist wanted $75 to re-cement it. When I asked, discount for cash? The doc pocketed the crisp $50 I offered. Threatened to quit. Many subscription services and publications will counteroffer. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The Israeli military says 12 more hostages, including 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals, have been released from Gaza and have returned to Israel. In return, Israel released another 30 Palestinian prisoners. It comes on the 5th day of the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, which is due to last at least one more day. Meanwhile, CIA Director William Burns has held meetings in Qatar aimed at freeing more hostages. He reportedly met with his Israeli and Egyptian counterparts as he steps up efforts to free the remaining Americans held by Hamas. A major political network is backing Nikki Haley's bid for the White House, a huge boost for the woman aiming to become the first female Republican Party nominee to run for U.S. president. FSN's Benji Heyer reports.
Money, data, campaign nous. These go a long way in US politics and could swing this race in favour of Nikki Haley. She's described by AFP Action in its endorsement as someone who can turn the page and win, allowing the American people to move on from the current political era. The Conservative Network claims its internal polling shows the former South Carolina governor and former ambassador to the United Nations is in the best position to defeat Donald Trump in the primaries, despite still trailing the former president as he vies for the Oval Office again. This marks the first time the deep-pocketed group has thrown its weight behind a Republican candidate in the presidential primary stages. It's a big blow for one of Haley's fellow candidates and rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's blasted the decision. Benji Heyer, Washington.
A flight running on so-called greener fuel has landed in New York from London. It's the first transatlantic commercial airliner powered entirely by sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Virgin Atlantic says Tuesday's flight proves fossil-derived fuel can be replaced by sustainable aviation fuel. SAF is already used in small amounts, mixed with traditional jet fuel, but accounts for less than 0.1% of the aviation fuel used around the world. It's made from crops, household waste, and used cooking oil. Leaders in the aviation industry view SAF as the most effective way of bringing net emissions down to zero. But some warn the higher cost of the eco-fuel could push flight prices up, while some environmental campaigners say the only way to truly reduce emissions is to fly less.
And in U.S. markets, the Dow Jones rose 0.2%, the S&P 500 was up 0.1%, and the Nasdaq rose 0.3%. From Bureaus Worldwide.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
What is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? We're back. Another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live network. We're going. We're in the back half of hour 2 right now. Got another whole hour after this. I don't know where you're listening, but hey, send us an email or send us a message on Twitter. Tell us where you're at, where you're from, what you're doing. Why are you listening on the radio right now? Why are you listening on the Free Talk Live channel on your favorite podcast app? Just a little bit about yourself, okay? We'd love to hear it. Also, we've got a daily podcast that we do, if you want to hear more, called Good Morning Liberty. We talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning every single day of the week when we want to. We might miss a day every now and then, okay? Nobody's perfect, but we're just a couple free market individualists from Nashville, Tennessee, who care so much about this stuff that we've got 1,122 episodes as of today talking about some of this content. So you want to go find that on your favorite podcast app. You can go to joingml.com also, and that'll take you to a sign up for the Fed Haters Club. Those are the people that get to hang out with us live every single day of the week. They chip in content when we do Dumb Bleep of the week, and so some of the stuff that we talk about comes from this live group. We talk back and forth with them during the show, so you'll notice us cutting up back and forth with some random people who you can't hear. That's because we're just interacting with the Fed Haters Club. And of course, they get discounts on merchandise and special Fed Haters Club merchandise, things like that. So I'm not trying to be too pushy of a salesman or anything, but if you do care about liberty and the future of all humanity, then you might want to check out the Fed Haters Club. All right, so Charlie is not here for this interview either, but I am joined by James Chernowski, who's been on the show several times now. He's a senior tech and innovation policy analyst at Americans for Prosperity. James, nice to have you back. Well, we've got a couple things to talk about today, as we were just discussing. The first thing I wanted to ask about was this 702 reauthorization, and I know we've mentioned 702 a few times in the past, but for people who don't immediately recognize the number that we're mentioning, if you could let them know what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Section 702 is a portion of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, known as FISA, more broadly speaking. And what that does is it actually provides surveillance authorities to our intelligence community to go and collect the communications of non-U.S. persons. Now, the problem that's been documented with this particular program is that more often than not, when they are doing this, they are actually collecting the information of Americans too. And that's really problematic. You know, we have a constitution with the Fourth Amendment, and that doesn't go away just because your data was overseas and got collected incidentally here. So this program has been repeatedly misused and abused in the 15 years since it was signed into law by then the Bush administration. It's been used to go and spy on January 6th protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters, sitting members of Congress, a state, local party, and 19,000 political donors to a campaign, right? So I think that we have lots of documented abuses that have happened with this program. And as a result of that, we've seen a very interesting, case of strange bedfellows emerge, where you have both, members of the left and the right getting together, recognizing that this is a problem that is in desperate need of a solution. So recently we had a couple of senators and some members of the House of Representatives go and introduce what's called the Government Surveillance Reform Act that seeks to actually go and address some of these misuses and abuses that we've had occur underneath Section 702 of FISA. So that way you can have the balance of the national security interests, because that certainly is an aspect that we can't ignore, while also balancing that against the people's civil liberties here in the United States. That is very paramount, I think, to maintaining our national security, but also helping to restore lost trust in the very institutions that are supposed to be helping keep America safe.
So I've grown pretty cynical on all of these things, and when I hear that they're reforming something, my assumption is that at the end of the day, they're somehow going to have more power afterwards that we didn't know of. But is that what's happening this time?
Thankfully, no. That's not the intention, at least. We're trying to go and have a productive conversation that, creates guardrails and increases Congress's oversight and accountability functions that it can have over the intelligence community that has been using these authorities for years. And really the punishments for violating the law in this instance have been negligible to non-existent. The worst punishment that I've heard of has been when somebody lied to the FISA court, actually underneath the Carter page, which was underneath a completely different portion of FISA. That lawyer in question just basically faced a probation, which is nothing in the scheme of things, which means that the intelligence community can feel quite emboldened to just go and blatantly disregard things and violate your rights. Because, again, what's the punishment for going and doing it? Seems to be not all that much. So the GSRA as it's known to be, is trying to go and have some accountability measures in there for people that go and knowingly and willingly violate that law. And then it also goes and has, like I said, oversight functions for Congress, more broadly speaking. But then it doesn't just focus on FISA. It also goes and covers the executive surveillance programming that we see done underneath Executive Order 12333, it's called. So it's really trying to tackle the broader surveillance issue that has plagued our government over the last 15 plus years. And you know, again, the intention is to not go and have the government be more empowered. And at least as written, I don't see many ways that that would be possible. So that's the good news.
I've read something about them potentially requiring a warrant to access this information, which I've also read as a red line for some of these people. Are we going to get that warrant?
Yes, that is actually one of the mainline features of the legislation, is that there would be a warrant requirement that would be in place there, where, you know, if you're trying to go and access that information, where in a situation where you would normally require a warrant, it's saying get a warrant, which is a very simple thing, I think. You know, I don't think that's controversial to go and ask for, but apparently if you ask the administration, that's just a big no-no, and they will threaten to veto the legislation, even though when they were making those comments, interestingly enough, the Biden official that was speaking anonymously said that they had not read the proposal. So I think it's a little hard to go and sit there and you know, make such kind of commentary when you haven't even read the proposal to know what's in it. But then again, maybe that's just, you know, part of Congress more broadly speaking, where they just don't read the bills or something.
Well, we need to sign it to know what's in it. We all know that.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So I think that, you know, we want to avoid that kind of a situation playing out here. And I think that the warrant requirement is actually very important because, again, you don't want this just being misused and abused. And part of the reason why is that, again, they don't have to worry about the warrants. They're just going and operating with the FISA court, you know, where, again, it's very difficult because if you're somebody who's being targeted, let's say, for that kind of surveillance, one of the issues is that you wouldn't even know. This is a point that Senator Lee raised when he was at the press conference introducing the legislation. He's like, how would you know? All this is classified, right? So you don't even know. So part of the measures in the GSRA is also trying to go and increase the transparency within the FISA court process, and having an amicus that can go and review some of this stuff to go and defend the civil liberties a little bit more, you know, scrupulously than otherwise has been possible, right? So again, I think that this was a very strong proposal by members, again, across the political spectrum that recognize that there's a problem, and they do recognize the national security importance, I think. But again, it can't be that in pursuit of that mission that you get a blank check to do whatever you want, because national security, civil liberties do matter. And the fact that you have had all those abuses over the years has led to people not trusting in the FBI and these intelligence communities that have, you know, largely gone unchecked for years on end. So again, it's really important to go and get us back on a path where we can go and restore the lost trust in these institutions. And that's what this kind of legislation tackles.
I have a question on the warrant. Maybe you'll know how this works. Just one more thing on that. Is this a warrant that goes to an outside normal legal court process, or is this going to be an in-house warrant where they, you know, that the FISA court has to do, or is it just going to be a rubber stamp warrant, I guess is what I'm asking?
No, I don't think that it would be a rubber stamp warrant. I think the intention there is to make sure that it is something that, you know, is something that you'll actually have to monitor. I think that is a problem that we've seen occur in other instances, where I remember back to my work in the States on this in Utah, there was a report one time where the average time for a judge to go and approve a warrant took less than the average number of pages that would have been, you know, required for reading, let's say, in terms of the time. It just didn't line up right. So that the rubber stamping thing is certainly an issue. But no, I think that this is meant to actually go and reinforce, you know, having that due process being respected there. So I would say that it's not trying to go and have a rubber stamping process, which is why the administration is so opposed to it. They think that it would be untenable and would result in people getting killed, which I think is not true whatsoever. Again, if there was exigency, it's not like you can't go and navigate that. So again, I think that it's not meant to do a rubber stamp. It's not meant to go and, you know, prevent the government from dealing with those, you know, high risk situations, if you will. I think that it's trying to be very cognizant of respecting the boundaries in both directions here.
I guess I wonder if in doing this, does it mean that people in Congress are learning the lesson that it's bad for the government to have this much blanket power in surveillance? I thought when Trump got in office, well, his campaign was spied on using this. So I assume that we are actually going to be kind of clamping down on the surveillance state, but it actually expanded a little bit while he was in power, to my understanding anyway. But now you talk about them spying on BLM, things like that. Is Is it just that people on both sides of the aisle are sort of learning this lesson slowly as more time goes on?
Yeah, I think that's why you've seen a turn with many Republicans, getting onto this kind of stuff. But I mean, the people that are leading on this have been critics of this exact kind of issue for many years. I mean, Mike Lee, that's always been his bread and butter, is talking about civil liberties and worry about government abuse of power, right? He's been so strong on that for years on end. So he's really been a champion in this space. And same thing for Ron Wyden, too, to his credit. I mean, again, he's a Democrat, but he's really good about understanding why it's problematic when the government just has these untapped and unaccountable powers at their disposal, right? So I think that we can't ignore, the importance of the bipartisan nature of this legislation.
It's also interesting to me, I guess just one more thing on this same topic, that as we keep hearing about the border being so relaxed and so many people coming over, we don't know how many members of terrorist groups have come across. I am somewhat surprised to see them issuing more restrictions on the government surveillance at the time that they're also talking about more and more threats potentially from within the U.S. So what's that side saying about it?
Yeah, I think that, it's an interesting conversation around national security is ultimately what that comes down to. And I think that that's a line drawing exercise in my view, is that, how far does national security take you to justify the ends that you're seeking to accomplish here? And at the end of the day, I think that there's a balancing measure there. And that's why it's important to go and have the conversation, to go and close the gaps where we can here, because at the end of the day, I think that those same Republicans that care about border security also recognize the serious problem that's come from the government weaponizing its power to go and target, American civilians, which again, this program was originally meant to target non-U.S. persons. So I think that, Republicans are certainly keenly aware of trying to strike that balance a little bit better. So I think that I'm personally that there's a way that we can go and navigate that conversation better than perhaps we might have been able to in years past.
All right, well, let's pivot to another conversation here. You were telling me beforehand that you've been following this Biden executive order on AI, and what do you think about that so far?
Well, it's not great. There are some good things tucked away in it, so it's not all bad. But there are many things that it's trying to do. So, number one, it's leveraging the Defense Production Act in order to go and adjust how the government procurement process is going to work around these technologies, which is something that I'm internally torn about, because on one end, as we were just talking about with FISA, the government can go and leverage this technology to go and do some really abusive things. But on the other side, the government's also one of the largest procurers of a lot of this software, which means that it can go and basically shape what some companies might be doing in terms of their development processes of the technology, which could harm innovation and growth that we otherwise might not have because they're trying to go and get those government contract dollars, right? So I have mixed feelings about that particular aspect of the executive order. But then on the flip side, it also rightly recognizes that we need to go and do more to streamline and make it more efficient to get these immigrants into the United States that are specialized in dealing with this kind of technology, so that we can maintain our knowledge gap over the rest of the world on artificial intelligence. The United States is leading in many ways in this race. And the best way that we can ensure that we do that is by making sure that we keep the best minds here in the United States and attract them here, and make sure that we have the companies here in the United States. So that's great. But I think that gets undermined when you're dealing with the procurement process stuff, which might go and slow down innovation, and by extension, perhaps the need for as many immigrants to go and tackle this pressing issue as it comes up. And then, there's other parts of the executive order that are tackling, nuclear war and biochemical weapons and AI being used in those instances. It's also calling on the FTC to go and enforce existing law, but also contemplate new rules and regulations, which makes Lena Khan so happy, because she is not a fan of AI either. She tried investigating OpenAI back in July, underneath the guise of broad consumer harm. But in actuality, what it was about was her trying to target the large language model as inputs that was producing, false results about individuals, right? So I'm not overly excited about him going and encouraging the FTC to do more here, but he's also encouraging the broad administrative state to do more too. enforce existing laws. Think about how you're going to be using it. Think about how you might want to regulate it within your space. That's a death by 1,000 cuts strategy to AI, and that I think is a net negative. So we're not particularly thrilled overall with the AI executive order from this administration.
Well, there's a big danger of if they're going to get involved in regulating AI, my assumption is there'll be a lot of regulatory capture by some of the really big corporations that are already well established in this field, and they'll have regulations that are going to help them grow and make more money at the expense of some of the smaller companies. And is that likely to happen, you think?
I mean, yeah, 100%. I think that part's hard to ignore. And it's been something that I've been beating the drum about since a lot of this stuff is kicking off over the last year, is that I can't help but notice that the kinds of regulations that people are clamoring for would go and entrench the very people that this administration are so upset with. We've talked about numerous times on your show the animosity towards the big tech sector, if you will. And I can't help but note that these kinds of proposals would make Microsoft a lot better positioned to go and maintain a good, strong status than in an alternative situation where they don't have these kinds of rules and regulations that control things. And I can't help but also note that really the ones that are at risk here too are the open source community that actually drive a lot of cool little innovations that we don't otherwise think about that improve our online experiences more broadly speaking. So when we're going and we're doing these arbitrary guidelines of, well, if you have a frontier model or if you have these parameters that this kind of regulation would apply to you, and they're like, well, this only applies to the very largest models. It's basically what you're assuming there is that nobody else wants to go and grow to be to that level. And I think that that's a wrong-headed approach. It does not make sense to me.
The government's not typically who I think about when I think about brand new technologies or anything. I think about them hand keying in people's tax information or them using some kind of software that's a language that's 50, 60 years old or something, when they're dealing with this. So I don't really see them as someone who should be heavily involved in the development of AI in the first place. Would it be better if they would just stay out altogether?
I would certainly argue so, and that's what we did when we were having the conversations about the internet back in the day. Europe decided to be a lot more hands-on and restrictive about their policy choices, whereas the United States was like, we're going to go and embrace hands-off. And what do you know? We gained trillions of dollars in economic activity, lots and lots of jobs that are high-paying and really good, and a lot of net positive for the United States when we have a $26 trillion economy. And the same kind of impact can be had here in AI, because AI is going to be impacting every single industry of our economy in some rhyme or fashion, both in an internal facing capacity as well as in a consumer facing capacity. And I can't think of anything worse than having an administration where the president was influenced about his thinking on AI a little bit by watching the most recent Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible movie, to go and think about that and have worries about it. That's just the whole point of a movie, is that you're supposed to suspend belief, not actually go and buy into it. So I mean, it's really alarming when you see stuff like that. I think that on average, you want to go and embrace a light touch approach. You want to go and see what we can do to support, not stifle, the innovation and entrepreneurial spirit of the American economy that we have out there. But unfortunately, we've let these AI doomers go and drive the conversation because they're worried about nuclear war, pandemics. That's what they're likening AI to. And that's just like the chances of that happening, the Terminator doomsday scenario, it is so unrealistic in terms of that probability that it is wrong to be couching the conversation in that kind of an outcome, because what that does is it drives your entire perception of the technology by fear. And we've seen this play out time and time over history, whether it was with the printing press or radio or television or going to the smartphone. People always feared this technology, and then once it got integrated, people actually liked it and were better off as a result of it. And the same thing holds true here.
Okay, you brought it up, so totally off-topic conversation here. What did you think about the new Mission Impossible and the villain being AI? Did you like that?
I actually have not seen the new Mission Impossible movie. So when I saw that was what it was, I was like, of course it's AI. And I was actually just talking to my dad last night, and he was telling me about some other movie on Netflix that also has AI as part of its enemy list. And I'm just like, I'll leave it to that. Maybe Hollywood's, Writers Guild or something is trying to go and push anti-AI stuff into the script more or something. I don't know. We got to go and fix that pronto, because I would rather go and focus the conversation around AI about the immense good that it can do, about how it can go and help kids better navigate their educational system so that they can learn better. Because one thing that happened with COVID was we locked everybody down, we kept kids in, and the learning loss is generational in its impact. And this can go and help close that gap a little bit more, because we can go and not just teach kids about what's right or wrong, but how to get to right instead of that simple binary, right? Or in the healthcare context, AI is being used to help spot cancer at a much more effective and efficient rate than it was otherwise able to in the past, when it was just relying on the X-ray technicians to go and figure it out. 50% versus 25% on the miss rate, that's a massive difference. That's a lot of lives saved, right? Using AI to go and help a person that had a stroke by giving them trousers that are connected to the AI to help them with walking. That's incredibly important for them, right? But that doesn't get discussed because there's a perverse incentive to go and highlight the Terminator situation, or to go and highlight, the weird, creepy AI personality that came out because somebody intentionally broke the large language model. That's just silly stuff.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not as fun to talk about kids being able to learn certain topics, during the pandemic better than it is to talk about a robot coming from the future or cyborg coming from the future to kill people. That's, I will admit, that one's a lot more exciting to me, and it does work. And I wonder if that's why they focus on the fear, because politicians, they can govern a lot by people being scared of things. And so that's why it's so easy for them to jump into this field.
Oh, you're 100% right. Whether it's in FISA or it's in artificial intelligence, fear is a very powerful tool because it will go and let you, do things that you otherwise might not do. That was the same thing with COVID. Fear of that disease led to us doing a lot of things that would otherwise not happen. People were willing to give up their civil liberties in exchange for the security and privacy. With FISA, you're willing to go and give up civil liberties because you're worried about national security or another 9/11 happening, right? And in the instance of AI, maybe you're willing to go and give up the economic progress and all of that is possible if we let AI go about unfettered, because you're worried about the minuscule chance that you get the doomsday situation from Terminator. There's a lot of power in that message, but it doesn't make it any less wrong. It is a bad message to be sending. It is anti-American at its core, because America has actually flourished by embracing tech and innovation. Imagine if the Wright brothers had to go through this large, process of getting approval from the government before deploying its, new plane design every single time, right? That would just defy the law of, of logic. Why would you do that? That you imagine how much more stagnant our growth would be, and our growth rates in the economy would be if we had to go and follow that kind of regime. So, we're going and doing what we can. We think that particular executive order is way too broad, and it's abusing emergency powers because he's using the Defense Production Act for it. So we've gone and submitted some FOIAs to the Biden administration, trying to get some more clarity around what makes them think that, AI is an emergency or something when it's here to stay. It's going to be a permanent fixture of our economy, and we're going to try to hold them accountable for this abuse of power.
As you were bringing up the Wright brothers, I just thought about Starship sitting on the launch pad for a couple months waiting on approval from the FAA so they can actually launch, which hopefully will be tomorrow morning, and I'll be watching to see if that happens. But anyway, James, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Let everyone know where they can go to read all your stuff and keep up with what you're doing.
Absolutely. So to get all my latest musings on tech policy, you can go and follow me on X at JamesCZ19, or you can go and check out my profile on the Young Voices website, which is youngvoices.com.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Big thanks once again to James for coming on. He's been a frequent guest and always knows his stuff when it's coming out. When it comes to any of this tech policy stuff, I don't have time to read all of it, so it's good to have some experts come on, and he's always a great one. And like I was saying before we started this interview, if you want to hear more of this or hear every single piece of content that we do, then you want to find Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. You can also go to our TikTok. Yeah, that's right. We got a TikTok. Got to keep up with the kids these days. Or Instagram, if that's your thing. Or Twitter/X, if that's where you hang out. That's where you will find me most of the time. And of course, we've got 1,000 videos on YouTube and hundreds of hours, I guess probably thousands of hours of content out there on YouTube. So go find that as well. We'll be right back with Liberty at Night.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio is great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The Israeli military says 12 more hostages, including 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals, have been released from Gaza and have returned to Israel. In return, Israel released another 30 Palestinian prisoners. It comes on the 5th day of the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, which is due to last at least one more day. Meanwhile, CIA Director William Burns has held meetings in Qatar aimed at freeing more hostages. He reportedly met with his Israeli and Egyptian counterparts as he steps up efforts to free the remaining Americans held by Hamas. A major political network is backing Nikki Haley's bid for the White House, a huge boost for the woman aiming to become the first female Republican Party nominee to run for U.S. president. FSN's Benji Heyer reports.
Money, data, campaign nous. These go a long way in US politics and could swing this race in favour of Nikki Haley. She's described by AFP Action in its endorsement as someone who can turn the page and win, allowing the American people to move on from the current political era. The Conservative Network claims its internal polling shows the former South Carolina governor and former ambassador to the United Nations is in the best position to defeat Donald Trump in the primaries, despite still trailing the former president as he vies for the Oval Office again. This marks the first time the deep-pocketed group has thrown its weight behind a Republican candidate in the presidential primary stages. It's a big blow for one of Haley's fellow candidates and rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's blasted the decision. Benji Heyer, Washington.
A flight running on so-called greener fuel has landed in New York from London. It's the first transatlantic commercial airliner powered entirely by sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Virgin Atlantic says Tuesday's flight proves fossil-derived fuel can be replaced by sustainable aviation fuel. SAF is already used in small amounts, mixed with traditional jet fuel, but accounts for less than 0.1% of the aviation fuel used around the world. It's made from crops, household waste, and used cooking oil. Leaders in the aviation industry view SAF as the most effective way of bringing net emissions down to zero. But some warn the higher cost of the eco-fuel could push flight prices up, while some environmental campaigners say the only way to truly reduce emissions is to fly less.
And in U.S. markets, the Dow Jones rose 0.2%, the S&P 500 was up 0.1%, and the Nasdaq rose 0.3%. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the future of politics in the Netherlands, following the shock win in the country's elections last week by far-right leader Geert Wilders. His Freedom Party captured 37 seats in the country's parliament, more than any other, but he doesn't have enough lawmakers to govern without going into a coalition, and talks are underway to see whether he'll be able to form a government. His far-right views may make that complicated, according to Dennis McShane, a former British government Minister of State for Europe who writes extensively on the continent's affairs.
The man is an out-and-out racist. He talks about Islam as a religion that wants to dominate the world, take it over completely and drive everybody out. He's anti-Brussels. He got about 25% of the vote, so 3 out of 4 Dutch voters said no thanks to him. It's one of the wonders of proportional representation. You end up with an extraordinary number of parties. I really would urge people to wait and see what kind of government he can form.
Wilders insists that he will end up being the next Dutch Prime Minister, but he'll need to strike a deal with at least 2 other parties to make that happen, and already caretaker Prime Minister Mark Rutte of the Conservative VVD and the leader of a centrist party, the NSC, are both ruling out working with Wilders, calling his positions too extreme. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Israel says 12 more hostages, including 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals, have been released from Gaza in exchange for another 30 Palestinian prisoners. A major political network backs Nikki Haley's bid for the White House, and the first transatlantic commercial airliner powered entirely by sustainable aviation fuel flies from London to New York. That is the latest feature story news. Iris.
Sea anemones are the most disgusting of all tidal creatures. Their thick tentacle arms are engorged with the collected urine that makes up much of tide pools. Whale urine, fish urine, otter urine, crab urine, all sucked up by the moon and deposited in these natural outhouses. Clownfish share a symbiotic relationship with sea anemones. The clownfish cleans the sea anemone. In exchange, the anemone sprays urine on the face of the clownfish. It's one fetishistic delight. Contrary to popular belief, sea urchins are not in fact animals. Indeed, they are not alive at all. They are simply the clumped together leavings of the ocean's denizens.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Well, what is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Liberty at Night with Nate and Charlie on the Free Talk Live Network, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. How's it going today, Chuck?
Oh, tonight, you mean? It's
Tonight.
Going great tonight.
I've always got my sunglasses on. I can't tell.
Because you wear your sunglasses at night.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. All the time.
That must be nice. I can't find my sunglasses.
You can't?
They were lost in the Thanksgiving shuffle.
Oh, I know how much you love those things.
Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I did, yeah. I did have a good one. I hope everyone listening had a great Thanksgiving. Our Tuesday night crowd, it's our first time talking to you since last week, so you're at least 10 pounds heavier. And so thank you for being here. We got some things to talk about. We're going to be playing a little Reagan clip here because it pertains to something funny that happened yesterday. We got a couple news items to go through. I wanted to start off with a conspiracy theory. Is that okay? Do you want the conspiracy theories today?
I love conspiracy theories.
I've been seeing something troubling go around, starting off in the land of China. And apparently, right now in the land of China, there is a mystery pneumonia sweeping over China, causing people to overwhelm the hospitals. Chinese officials are now encouraging people to wear masks, social distance, stay at home.
Oh.
China's health ministry is downplaying the sickness, saying the uptick in cases was caused by the flu and other known pathogens. Newsweek says several countries are taking steps to prepare against the spread contagious respiratory illness as China battles a concerning spike in pneumonia cases. Many parts of China have been hit by the surprising surge in the illness, which has particularly impacted children. They were like, that one we cooked up last time didn't do so well against kids.
Yeah.
So this time we need something for kids. Northern provinces in China have experienced a jump in flu-like illness for 5 weeks straight since mid-October. The fast spread of the COVID-19 in 2020 prompted extreme public health restrictions and quarantine measures. We all know the thing. In China, the outbreak has recently worsened, according to the WHO, not the band. That's the World Health Organization, spurring nations like Taiwan, India. Ooh, that's some fighting words right there, saying Taiwan's a nation. China's not going to like that one. India, Vietnam, to prepare in case the respiratory illness spreads further. The increase in cases, especially in children, prompted the WHO to request more information from Beijing last week.
And they give great information.
Super prompt to give out that information. More than 6% of hospital cases were attributed to flu-like illness in northern China, a steep increase over the past years, according to a report by Focus Taiwan. So a lot of stuff in
China, they're at battle right
Maybe
now.
this is the war. This is the beginning of the war right here. They're going to start it with an illness.
Maybe. We don't know.
I'm just wondering, as we get into the holiday season, it was around this time back in 2019 that another illness
4 years ago
started spreading around in China the year right before a presidential election came up. And here we go. And we got this illness, pneumonia, this time affecting, allegedly, children. And we got a presidential election coming up. It doesn't mean you got to shut the whole country down, but what if you just encouraged everyone to use mail-in ballots? What if that's all you had to do was because you didn't want to get this mysterious kung flu or whatever we called it back then. I don't remember which one it is.
Oh, you're getting us canceled again.
Anyway,
we're just on the brink of coming out of our shadow ban. Okay.
That's the other thing I had to talk to you about. You said something on there about like streaming to Facebook. We'll get banned if we just stream to Facebook. That's why we stream to Discord. We don't, because we don't have to watch what we say when we stream the Discord. So we're going to have to watch that. I don't know how they're going to like that. Like what we just said just then.
Yeah. I mean, we're just now coming out of the throes.
I know.
It's been almost 4 years this show has been shadow banned.
We're going to start streaming the 4chan.
Now we're definitely banned. That's it. You did it.
Okay, here's something funny that's going to be in Dumb Bleep of the Week, I'm sure, but it's only Tuesday, so we needed to talk about it. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona just said with a completely straight face, I think it was President Reagan who said, we're from the government and we're here to help. And so this guy, Secretary of Education, is he's talking about all the good things that they're going to be doing for everyone.
Was this missing context?
No.
Oh.
This is not missing context. He was actually talking about all the great things they're going to be doing for everyone and decided to quote President Reagan to get some people on the right on his side and say, hey, even President Reagan said we're from the government, we're here to help. Now, he could have meant it in just a little bit different way, but here's this guy saying that.
We're going to set up follow-up calls with every governor we met with to make sure we're available. As I think it was President Reagan said, we're from the government. We're here to help. There are resources there. There's technical assistance there.
I think just right then he was like, there's something I'm missing. That was that pause that he just took. Was that the entire quote? I'm not sure.
Insert foot into mouth.
Okay, let's see what Reagan actually said, and then maybe we'll listen to a bit of one of his speeches for fun today.
Also, like he's like, we set up follow-up calls with every governor we spoke with to make sure we're available.
That's what people love, or follow-up call. We're sending out email blasts to everyone. Here you go.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Okay. Slightly different context than what the other guy was saying then. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yep.
I was telling y'all.
So he did say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
He kind of did say that.
Just missed the first part of it.
He didn't even say we're from the government, we're here. He said, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And I was talking beforehand. We were having a chat about Reagan beforehand, and I know libertarians out there that are listening. He grew the government. The government got bigger while he was the president. Our yearly expenditures, I was just looking on the Fred, they went up by about 55%, while like our yearly expenditures went up by about 55% while he was the president. And I didn't look at the deficit. Maybe that increased as well. I'm not sure exactly. If our expenditures went up that much, I would guess that the deficit went up during that time as well. But his rhetoric,
clearly he instituted, Reagan trickle down.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Reaganomics,
trickle down Reaganomics. That's what we got.
Yeah.
His rhetoric was on point, though. It was so good. So as I was looking for this quote, and if you guys don't mind, if you'll pardon me,
you'll excuse me.
Yes, I was looking for this quote, and I came across his inauguration address, and there was a little clip of it, and I was like, okay, let me just click on this and see what he's talking about. And gall darn it, if I didn't listen to the entire thing this morning, like it was good. And that's not what I want to make everyone else do right now. But I don't know. I think it'd be cool to listen to a few minutes of this guy saying things that I wish people were saying these days. I wish he did all the stuff he said he was going to do, or I wish the government got smaller while he was the president. I'm sure he did some great things, some other not great ones. He kind of torpedoed the healthcare system. We already had Medicare, but he made it even worse with the EMTALA. We got that while he was president. Some people like EMTALA. They think that the emergency room should be forced to take care of you, as if they weren't forced, they would just watch you die. That would just be that would happen all the time. I believe there was like a case of this happening. And so they signed this into law. That really screwed up our healthcare system. And then we continued to screw it up even more with Obamacare and stuff like that. But anyway, this stuff makes me feel good when I listen to it. And I want a presidential contestant front runner that talks like this actor talks.
I want somebody to actually do.
Yeah.
I want to see
this.
action, though.
Yeah. Say this.
Because words are nice.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't listen to words anymore. You guys shouldn't even be listening to me.
No.
You should see what the actions are.
No, we're going to go outside and tax people immediately after this. Okay. Now, here's a few minutes of this speech.
The business of our nation goes forward. These United States are confronted with an economic affliction of great proportions. We suffer from the longest and one of the worst sustained inflations in our national history. It distorts our economic decisions, penalizes thrift, and crushes the struggling young and the fixed income elderly alike. It threatens to shatter the lives of millions of our people. Idle industries have cast workers into unemployment, human misery, and personal indignity. Those who do work are denied a fair return for their labor by a tax system which penalizes successful achievement and keeps us from maintaining full productivity. But great as our tax burden is, it has not kept pace with public spending. For decades, we have piled deficit upon deficit, mortgaging our future and our children's future for the temporary convenience of the present. To continue this long trend is to guarantee tremendous social, cultural, political, and economic upheavals. You and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but for only a limited period of time. Why then should we think that collectively, as a nation, we're not bound by that same limitation? We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. And let there be no misunderstanding. We're going to begin to act beginning today. The economic ills we suffer have come upon us over several decades. They will not go away in days, weeks, or months, but they will go away. They will go away because we, as Americans, have the capacity now, as we've had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? All of us together, in and out of government, must bear the burden. The solutions we seek must be equitable, with no one group singled out to pay a higher price. We hear much of special interest groups. Well, our concern must be for a special interest group that has been too long neglected. It knows no sectional boundaries or ethnic and racial divisions, and it crosses political party lines. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people. This breed called Americans. Well, this administration's objective will be a healthy, vigorous, growing economy that provides equal opportunities for all Americans with no barriers born of bigotry or discrimination. Putting America back to work means putting all Americans back to work. Ending inflation means freeing all Americans from the terror of runaway living costs. All must share in the productive work of this new beginning, and all must share in the bounty of a revived economy. With the idealism and fair play which are the core of our system and our strength, we can have a strong and prosperous America at peace with itself and the world. So as we begin, let us take inventory. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people.
Wish that would have happened.
All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government. Now, so there will be no misunderstanding, it's not my intention to do away with government. It is rather to make it work. Work with us, not over us. To stand by our side, not ride on our back. Government can and must provide opportunity, not smother it. Foster productivity, not stifle it. If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth.
All right, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
actually still ended up watching further than what I planned on watching just then. But I was like, yeah, keep going.
Yeah,
Let's
he
do
said
this thing.
so many good things.
A lot of great things.
Yes.
So many things. We're great.
Even, saying that, to be reminded. First of all, I didn't hear any ums
No.
or uhs or anything.
No, I mean, he's reading.
But still, even sometimes when speakers are reading, they still have to every now and then, but that's not great speakers.
We a lot because those
a lot.
It's a fair amount of umming, I would say.
Maybe some more than others, and less than more than some, but less than others.
That's exactly
better
what
than
I
most.
thought it was.
But he said one thing I thought he said that was really cool was to be reminded that the states created the federal government, not the federal government creating the states. So
That's kind of like humbling yourself before the states.
But then he increased federal government by like 50%.
Still increased it.
There's no decrease. It still went up.
It's hard to stop a runaway train, however much you don't try. So it's just tough to do,
Yeah.
One thing I liked in there, I typed it out here. He said that he wanted an equitable system. Now, these days, what we look like as equitable is like we're going to reach out and help that person or
other people will pay a higher price for those.
Yeah. He said he wanted it equitable where no one pays a higher price. And that's a very different way of looking at it because he's basically talking about how, let's just say rich people, like, we don't have to make other people pay a higher price for this society. These days, we look at it and we say, well, some people shouldn't pay any price, or some people should pay the price for other people. And that's equity. But what's actually equity is everyone doing the same thing, in my opinion, anyway. That seems to be equal, right? When everyone's doing the same thing. That's weird. I also noticed that...
Well, and the rich people will naturally pay a higher price because they're rich.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a higher percentage.
Right.
It can be a higher total, but not a higher
Well, I'm just
percentage.
talking even in the free market.
Yeah.
Rich people are the ones who buy the expensive things that later become cheaper for everyone else after it becomes fine-tuned. There's easy examples of that with, TVs being one of them.
The other thing I noticed was just how often history repeats itself. Because you could actually take this speech
40 years ago
and you could just have Donald Trump give it or something. We're going to do a great job. It's going to be like a little bit different,
Yeah.
You could have Vivek, or I think Vivek might be one of the best ones at giving this type of message with, all the different people that are running right now. I wish he had a little bit more of a shot. It's still going to be Trump, by the way. Vivek's not going to pull ahead of Trump.
I think Trump's going to win the presidency.
Yeah. I don't
out on
know.
that one.
I don't know. I read this article that said that he said stuff that Hitler said. So I don't know if I want Hitler to be the president.
Which makes me believe he's going to win it even more.
They're definitely scared of him right now. Poor old Ron DeSantis is just floundering. He's become a laughing stock. I feel bad for the guy. But no, it's weird how the same stuff is going on right now.
He's like a fish out of water.
He is. He's talking. He's talking about inflation, and he's talking about our runaway deficits, and all the stuff that he's saying.
Runaway government growth.
We're just still dealing with it right now. Currently, you didn't have to change anything. You could just have one of the current presidential contenders give this exact same speech, and it completely relates to everything that's happening right now. You don't even have to know that this was in 1981.
It's the same different day.
Exactly. That leads me to ask the question, somewhat pessimistically, is this ever going to change?
Yeah.
Is it going to have to get really bad before it changes?
It looks like it did in Argentina. I mean,
true.
They finally elected someone who says the right things in Spanish.
Does say the right things in Spanish.
Yeah.
Let's get that brush up on that quote real quick. One more time from Miguel Cardona. That was fun.
We're going to set up follow-up calls with every governor we met with to make sure we're available. As I think it was President Reagan said, we're from the government. We're here to help.
That'll be a good dumb bleep.
Forgot that that's the most terrifying words.
That would be really good. Speaking of what we're talking about, Argentina right now, this headline from the New Yorker: the free market fundamentalism of Argentina's Javier Milei. The president-elect, a right-wing populist with authoritarian instincts, has been compared to Donald Trump, but his radical views on the economy set him apart. So
nothing speaks authoritarianism like wanting people to be left alone,
like leaving you alone. It's the most authoritarian thing I can think of. I actually wanted to pick apart this article today. I had it pulled up, and I saw that little, what do you call that second, like the byline or whatever the second thing is?
The subheadline.
Yeah. With authoritarian instincts. So they put this in there, and of course it gets people like us to talk about it, and it makes their fans happy, when they see this. I read the article, long article, really just gave a lot of history of Milei. It mentioned absolutely nothing pertaining to any authoritarian instincts whatsoever.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The Israeli military says 12 more hostages, including 10 Israelis and 2 Thai nationals, have been released from Gaza and have returned to Israel. In return, Israel released another 30 Palestinian prisoners. It comes on the 5th day of the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, which is due to last at least one more day. Meanwhile, CIA Director William Burns has held meetings in Qatar aimed at freeing more hostages. He reportedly met with his Israeli and Egyptian counterparts as he steps up efforts to free the remaining Americans held by Hamas. A major political network is backing Nikki Haley's bid for the White House, a huge boost for the woman aiming to become the first female Republican Party nominee to run for U.S. president. FSN's Benji Heyer reports.
Money, data, campaign nous. These go a long way in US politics and could swing this race in favour of Nikki Haley. She's described by AFP Action in its endorsement as someone who can turn the page and win, allowing the American people to move on from the current political era. The Conservative Network claims its internal polling shows the former South Carolina governor and former ambassador to the United Nations is in the best position to defeat Donald Trump in the primaries, despite still trailing the former president as he vies for the Oval Office again. This marks the first time the deep-pocketed group has thrown its weight behind a Republican candidate in the presidential primary stages. It's a big blow for one of Haley's fellow candidates and rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's blasted the decision. Benji Heyer, Washington.
A flight running on so-called greener fuel has landed in New York from London. It's the first transatlantic commercial airliner powered entirely by sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. FSN's Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Virgin Atlantic says Tuesday's flight proves fossil-derived fuel can be replaced by sustainable aviation fuel. SAF is already used in small amounts, mixed with traditional jet fuel, but accounts for less than 0.1% of the aviation fuel used around the world. It's made from crops, household waste, and used cooking oil. Leaders in the aviation industry view SAF as the most effective way of bringing net emissions down to zero. But some warn the higher cost of the eco-fuel could push flight prices up. while some environmental campaigners say the only way to truly reduce emissions is to fly less.
And in U.S. markets, the Dow Jones rose 0.2%, the S&P 500 was up 0.1%, and the Nasdaq rose 0.3%. From Bureaus Worldwide.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
The word authoritarian doesn't exist inside the article at all. And it just talks about his plan of dollarizing the economy. It lays out why they're actually not going to be able to do that. And a lot of the things he wants to do because the legislature is not going to be behind him on doing it.
But do you know how many people are going to think that this guy's authoritarian?
Exactly.
Simply
that's the
because
point.
of the subheading.
I know. Because they're not going to read the article. Who's going to read the article? No one.
You didn't even read the whole thing, did you?
I did read the whole.
The whole thing?
I was trying very hard to find the examples they give of why he's an authoritarian. And they gave no, and then they never mentioned the authoritarian thing again. In the article at all. They just put it there solely so we would talk about it today. Us.
And so then you're like, I'm not going to talk about it.
And that's what I said. So you're not going to control the content on this program. So let's move on real quick. Okay, speaking of
you did mention it.
I did. We did talk about it some.
Yeah. Very briefly.
That's too bad.
We're not going to give it another minute, though.
Not one single other minute. You see these articles about Javier Milei all the time, though, right-wing, Trump-like, and I don't know what it is.
I will say, look, so we do a podcast every day of the week on Good Morning Liberty.
Do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can, if you if you're listening to the radio and you're like, I want more of that, but you're probably not thinking. But if you are,
for both of you,
we do a podcast. And a while back, last year, I believe, I debated a very smart, intelligent lady, way smarter than I am. Her name is Amanda.
I thought you were going to say the most ladies.
She's probably smarter than most ladies, too.
Statistically.
She's way smarter than I am. Anyway, I debated her anyway because I'm not scared. Like my co-host here, Nathaniel Paul, is terrified of debates.
I said I would
Which
debate.
is fine. You can be scared of things like spiders and debates. And
those are my two biggest fears.
And that's why you have someone like me.
Yeah.
That's why we work so well together, because I don't fear those things at all. I fear other things.
What was the debate about?
It was about whether or not liberty needs a populist message, essentially. Does liberty need a populist candidate like Donald Trump, let's say, who has a very populist message to actually get elected and maybe affect some change? I argued the affirmative, that the liberty movement needs someone who's populist to garner the support necessary to win an election. Amanda, rightfully, I think, argued the negative in the fact that...
Rightfully? What do you mean rightfully?
Well, because it sucks that you need a populist message.
Oh, God.
Is what I would say.
That is a fast track to getting kicked out of the club. Look at that GIF.
Somebody posted a spider in the Fed Haters
I can't
Club. Look at that.
No. Whoa.
But anyway, the problem is what the reason I argued in the affirmative, and the reason why I think I was right, is because if you just look at our culture, people gravitate towards, and you look at human nature.
Reagan was a populist.
Reagan was a populist. Listen to the way he speaks. It moves even smart people like you.
Our Democrats who have won, I would say Obama was a populist, but would you really say the same thing about Biden? Or is the Democrat, is that left-wing ideology just naturally a populist ideology? Like that's what it caters to.
Yeah. Potentially.
It's a little bit tougher because on this side, whatever, I don't even want to say right, but whatever, you're more individualistic, and so it's tough to do the populist thing without feeling like a hypocrite or whatever when you're doing it,
I think for people, who are like real libertarians, like very solo.
I think that's why the Libertarian Party has such a hard time organizing people, because they're people who don't want to be organized.
Yeah, that is true. I would say, though, that still the majority of human beings the majority of human beings, can you control yourself for 1 second so I can get through?
Sorry.
So I can get through my message. Okay. I think the majority of human beings, like chili beans, human beings, okay, they still have that innate nature to want to belong to a group, right? We're still social creatures. There are very few people who actually legitimately like being alone. I'm not one of them. I don't. Yeah. No, that's a fear of mine, is being alone. I don't like being alone. I would rather be with a group of people. I'm a very social creature. Most human beings are. Okay. And so what I think, the reason a populist message works is because it stirs up that inner innate feeling of belonging to someone who's willing to fight back and actually fight back, because they tap into that shadow that people have, because everyone has one.
See, just
a little bit of a dark side almost, and that's exactly what Javier Milei did in the Libertarian Front, right? I mean, he literally went out there and went after the people and basically saying, like, I'm gonna rip you to shreds, all of it. And people want to get behind that.
He brought a chainsaw.
Yes, and Trump did the same thing, right? And now, did Trump follow through on all of that? No. Did he follow through on some of it? Yeah. The guy slashed a lot of regulations. That was a really good thing that Trump did.
He's out there saying that he wants to get rid of Obamacare. That's one of his campaign promises right now.
They had 2 years to do it, 2016, 17, and 18.
I've seen this one before.
Yeah.
I've seen this.
Right. And so anyway, I say all that to say, go back and listen to the debate I did with Amanda, and you'll see one of the reasons why I argued the affirmative, because I think when you look at our culture, and I think when you look at human nature, someone like Javier Milei, the reason why he won is he was a libertarian or liberty populist, and was able to be charismatic enough to get the people behind him to win the presidential election in a country.
The thing with Milei scares me because a populist campaign like that can disappear really quickly. You know, the people can get you to the office.
What percentage of the population was behind the American Revolution?
3%.
Like 3 to 5%.
That's 3. That's why people wear those patches that say 3%.
Yeah.
That's I believe those are the ones that they wear. So I get that. I get it. I know I agree with you that a populist candidate is the fastest way to get elected. I worry about the longevity. I was cracking up earlier because we just had this entire conversation solely because you said we're not going to spend one more minute on this Javier Milei thing. And so both of us conspired together to create what is now a 6-minute longer conversation solely because you said we're not going to spend another minute.
We didn't talk about that article, though.
It's true.
We didn't talk about that article. What was that, the New Yorker?
Yeah, the
Never
New
heard
Yorker.
of her.
No, don't like her. Okay, speaking of Ronald Reagan's message about the government being here to help the problem and stuff, from Politico, the FTC puts its lunch on its plate. It's got to be your lunch.
Before you get to this, though, honestly, the only reason I brought it up was to bring up my debate.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I selfishly
the one that you lost?
Yeah. I did. Now, I lost the debate, but it doesn't mean I wasn't right. So
that's true.
That's the way to look at it. There's always a little win in every loss. You know, you could sit and sulk in a corner about your loss, or you could sit in the corner and realize how right you were about your loss and move on with your day. So anyway. Plus, I want people to go listen to the podcast.
You should go listen to Good Morning Liberty on your favorite podcast app. Or you can find this entire episode. If you're listening on the radio right now, you can go to the Free Talk Live podcast channel and you can listen to the entire episode.
In case you have to,
get out of your car or whatever you're doing right now. The Federal Trade Commission is investigating if the $10 billion purchase of Subway creates a sandwich shop monopoly with Jimmy's, John's, and Arby's. The latter two, in addition to McAllister's Deli and Schlotsky's, are owned by private equity firm Rourke Capital, which inked a deal to buy Subway in August.
Did you know? Quick fact: Subway has the #1 locations in the United States.
I learned that in this article.
That's
I'm pretty
insane.
sure
They have like over 10,000 stores.
they're all over the place. And
you look at the map; they cover the whole map.
Now I don't know how
in places that people don't even live.
I don't know how profitable they are, dude. There's one between Metropolis and my dad's, a town of 300 people. There's one fast food chain between Metropolis and Pulaski, Illinois, and it's a Subway about halfway between.
Well, they're growing in popularity because people don't make sandwiches at home anymore.
I guess so. Well, it's a monopoly, so what are you going to do? There's no way you can make a sandwich at home.
Yeah.
The government is focused in part on whether the addition of Subway gives Rourke too much control of a lucrative segment of the fast food industry, the people said.
Making sandwiches.
Rourke paid. They don't want women to lose their jobs.
We're definitely getting canceled now.
Rourke paid around $10 billion for Subway, according to a third person with knowledge of the deal. The Atlanta-based Rourke focuses on consumer chains with franchise models, and which also include Dunkin', Buffalo Wild Wings, and Baskin Robbins.
Carol Baskin's Robbins.
The investigation is in the early stages, and any resolution is likely months away. Merger reviews by antitrust regulators can often take a year or more. They did this back in August, and now they're deciding to investigate, and now it's going to take a long time for this. If you would have asked me whether or not Subway was about to go out of business, I would have said, yeah. They're, because, I mean, honestly, who's serious? Send me an email, nate@goodmorningliberty.us. If you're like, I got to get some of that breads, you know? Because last I checked, it's mostly bread. And the bread's fine. That's fine. But who's stopping at a Subway these days?
I haven't eaten Subway.
Jared's in prison. You know? Who's going to Subway?
I still see these athletes, though. They're still paying athletes heftily.
That's true. I do see the commercials a lot.
Right. I think even Patrick Mahomes is now Subway guy.
In any merger review, regulators must first determine the market where they believe competition is harmed. The companies are arguing the FTC should widen its focus beyond sandwiches, saying consumers are choosing between a wider array of options when deciding what to eat, and that Rourke owns only a small fraction of the total U.S. fast food market, according to two of the people.
But they own all the sandwiches.
All the sandwich shops. According to August 23 rankings.
Well, is Chick-fil-A, is a chicken sandwich a sandwich?
I mean, it's a sandwich. There's
Are you
a lot
saying
of
they own
places
the cold meats? I
guess the cold... I don't know how.
I usually go to Publix to get my subs. I love the pub subs.
Yeah, well, that's another monopoly. That's why you go there, I guess. You got to choose between all the different monopolies to go eat every day.
Quiznos is out of business now. You know?
Are they?
I think so.
Huh.
Quiznos had good subs. What about Jersey Mike's?
A sub above? I'm not sure.
Rourke own that?
It's not listed. I'm sure it would have been.
Well, they have a monopoly, though.
Subway is the largest U.S. sandwich chain based on 2022 sales, with Arby's, Jimmy John's, and McAllister's Deli also in the top 7. So Rourke's doing pretty good overall.
Yeah, also Subway, I forgot about this, but Subway is a MAGA institution.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know
Based
that.
on Juicy Smoulier. I'm pretty sure he went to Subway.
Subway? Sandwiches?
Yeah.
All right. Other things the FTC is doing right now.
They're hard at work.
Oh man, they're always at it. Okay,
it's to
what's the
protect
Subway
you,
thing?
by the way.
So Rourke already owns Arby's, Jimmy John's, McAllister's Deli, Schlotzsky's. We know this. This tweet from Elizabeth Warren: "We don't need another private equity deal that could lead to higher food prices for consumers. The FTC is right to investigate whether the purchase of Subway by the same firm that owns Jimmy's John's and McAllister's Deli creates a sandwich shop monopoly." Have you seen the commercials where the dude, what's his name from that
Also,
TV show,
by
is
the
always
way,
calling it Jimmy's John's?
Yes. These are franchises, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's not like they own the they own the corporate structure. But most of these shops, Subways, Jimmy John's, McAllister's Deli, they're individually owned and operated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like there's like a McDonald's corporation, and then there's like the McDonald's stores.
So what's
that are usually owned by not McDonald's.
I try to wrap my head around this idea. The idea is they're going to buy Subway, and so then Subway Jimmy's John's and McAllister's are all going to form this cartel pricing model where they'll all be able to raise their prices, I guess. And the idea is...
Well, now there's a sandwich monopoly.
They got a sandwich monopoly, basically, and with the three of them together, kind of feels more like a cartel with one person kind of running the sandwich cartel. You know, this is dangerous people out there.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to pay your sandwich bill, folks. There are a lot of movies about this. Okay.
And think of the pigs that are going to be slaughtered.
The idea is
for their ham.
They can just raise their prices freely because when people go out to eat, they don't consider their other options. Like you see a line of restaurants and there's a McDonald's and a Burger King and a Bojangles and a Chick-fil-A
and Whataburger
and all these places. And then there's a Subway.
Culver's.
And you're like, well, I know Subway sandwiches are around $79 these days.
But I have to have a sandwich.
I get a free foot long if I stamp the rest of my card. So I got to go over there.
Which, by the way, that free sandwich now is worth a lot more, obviously.
So there's all different ways that they have to compete, not to mention the fact that you could buy your own gall-darn long bread and put your own meats on it and just eat that at home.
You could make your own gall-darn long bread.
Exactly.
You could make a 2-foot long.
Whatever length you want, man.
Sub.
It's up to you. It's constrained by the size of your oven. And you can make that bread and you can put your own meats on it.
That's the problem. Ovens.
That's big ovens.
Especially gas-powered ones. Yeah.
That's because that's bad for the environment.
I see where they're going with this.
This is all part of a grand master plan right now. So there's all different ways that they have to compete with people. And of course, if they raise their prices more than what people are willing to pay, they'll just go to another fast food restaurant, or they'll make their sandwich at home, or they'll go to a gas station, which also sells subpar sandwiches in their little cold section, or the Publix, which also sells sandwiches. There's all sorts of places for these long sandwiches. These mysterious,
I'm pretty sure
super important long sandwiches people have to get.
Speedway has their own subs.
They do. Yeah.
Which is,
Panera Breads. They got their own sandwiches out there.
But monopoly.
It's a monopoly. Yeah. For sure. That's what's going to happen. The other thing that they're working on right now is they're still trying to shut down this merger between Albertsons and Kroger right now, because that's going to lead to...
I'm so glad you said Kroger and not Kroger's. People
still say that, huh?
Still say Kroger's.
Mostly older people, I think, that say that.
It's like going to Aldi's or Walmart's.
It is just Aldi, isn't it?
It is Aldi, yeah.
Or Lowe's. After years of excessive inflation, the merger between these two would unlock significant benefits for consumers, more product options, lower prices, and better customer service. Unfortunately, the FTC already appears to have made up its mind. This is about the merger between Albertsons and Kroger. They say that that's going to lead to them being able to raise their prices on the idea that they're going to band together and have this grocery store monopoly, and which means they can charge whatever they want for their groceries. But unfortunately, they're not even the number 1 or 2 or 3 grocer out there. They're, I think it was number 4 and 6, Kroger and Albertsons, and that's just by rank. They're not even close to the market share that number 1 and 2 and 3 have. They're like, these are 2 little stores, and they're trying to band together so they don't get put out of business by Walmart. That's Walmart's.
Yeah.
Right now. Anyway.
So you're saying Walmart has a monopoly, but
they have
they're trying to stop this monopoly from forming, so that way we don't have 2 monopolies.
Yeah, there can only be 3. That's Right now we have about 6 monopolies. And they're worried
that's
that it
too many
go down.
for mono. Yeah, because mono means
any amount you want it to mean, but not
that's
6.
Right.
While the landmark deal is not expected to close until early 2024, it has already been reported that the FTC is not satisfied with the proposal, despite Kroger having agreed to divest over 400 stores in overlapping markets. They're just saying they're going to give away their stores that they've fought, that they gave their own blood for. They're just going to give them away to try and make the FTC happy. According to 2 sources with knowledge, the FTC will likely take Kroger and Albertsons to court. If true, the court battle will be unfortunate but not surprising. Where are the numbers here? Lena Khan, who has not won a court case yet. She's taken all kinds of people to court to try and block mergers, and she's lost all of them, which is awesome.
Good.
It's great. If there is a merger that is presenting a lot of risk of reducing competition, may even create a monopoly, how would it create a monopoly? We need to weigh those risks, and especially given that some of these remedies in the past have failed. Let me see.
What's amazing to me, though, it's like these people have nothing to do.
No,
but we created their positions, and now it's like that's what happens. You create these positions, and then they got to go looking.
Yeah.
For something that's not even happening.
And she just keeps using your money, by the way. She's losing all of these court cases. She's slowing down all of these business merger deals. Not only that, she's making people scared to do any mergers because they're worried they're about to spend a year in court when they want to do a merger.
She probably gets bonuses just based on how many lawsuits she files.
Yeah. That's it. She's trying. It's the thought that counts.
She's doing something.
There's no evidence that the Kroger-Albertsons merger will result in any of the supposed harm she believes it would. For starters, Kroger-Albertsons merger would not create a monopoly in the grocery market. According to a recent report by Retail Info, Walmart remains the nation's largest grocer, controlling, I hate to even reason use that word, they have earned 17% of the grocery market. The second and third largest grocers are...
I went to Walmart grocery last night.
Yeah. Lacey went last night to Walmart.
Last night or the night before?
She went both nights. That's just how powerful they are.
Putting herself in danger.
Well, she went to Mount Juliet this time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, the reason I went is because they were open till 11. And it was like 9:45, and the other places were going to Kroger.
That's a monopoly.
Closes at 10.
Let's see. The second and third largest grocers are Amazon and Costco.
Amazon number 2.
Second. Kroger and Albertsons are only a distant fourth and sixth with market shares of 4.4% and 2.2%. And so they're worried that the two of those are going to combine together, join forces to have a 6.6% controlling share while Walmart has 17. They don't give the number for Amazon, but let's say it's 10 or
and that's
whatever.
Because the Subway owner and the Kroger owner are their buddies.
They're working together. They put Subways in the Krogers. Actually, those are in Walmarts these days. So, yeah, I don't know.
If you follow it all the way through, though, it's a monopoly.
Oh, yeah. Well, it definitely is a monopoly. We know that. So in this article, they talk about how grocery stores, brick and mortar grocery stores are on the decline, and a lot of people are ordering their groceries online from places like Amazon
and Walmart.
Yeah, and
by the way,
the problem is
and Costco
for places like Kroger and Albertsons, as they lose their market share and their sales go down or they don't increase at the rate that, say, inflation is or something like that, or that their competitors are, they have a harder time offering some of the cheaper deals that they have. One thing that can help them is if they actually grow bigger, they combine together their two pretty good bank accounts. They've got Kroger brand foods. They've got Albertson brand foods that they have cheaper deals on, so they can actually offer cheaper products across both of the stores, and they can afford to try and take on Walmart, who has 3 times the market share that these two combined together would. Otherwise, what's going to happen is somewhere like Walmart and Amazon are just going to continue getting more and more of the market share, and Kroger or Albertsons or both are just going to go out of business. And then the only options you'll have are Walmart and Amazon and Costco. All the stuff that the FTC does ends up benefiting the biggest people, because these are two companies that are trying to stay alive right now, competing against Walmart. And if they aren't able to merge, they might not be able to stay alive. And then only Walmart will be left, thus creating a mega monopoly, a MAGA monopoly, in fact.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, the superstore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super MAGA.
Because Walmart they have the monopolies on those. Yeah, exactly.
All right, man, we got to go.
Look at the timing.
Look at that time.
All right, if you enjoyed today's show, or you didn't, either one, then stick around for more. Or don't. I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
And neither does liberty.
Literally matters not.
It matters not. The only thing that matters is liberty. And if you don't care about it, that's on you. I can't control that. I don't have a monopoly on liberty. And you can find that at goodmorningliberty.us. Brand new website, goodmorningliberty.us. Well, it's not new. It's just refurbished.
We got new shirts. Just put up a new shirt design a few days ago.
New merch. Go check it out. Go to joingmail.com, be part of the Fed Haters Club, or you can find that link on the website as well. Everything can be found on goodmorningliberty.us. That's goodmorningliberty.us. Go check out all that, or don't. Share the show with a friend, family member, or foe, or not.
Coming up a little later, the 10 best careers for someone at your level of attractiveness.
Oh, but right now we have something truly incredible for you. Kenneth Quinn is a real-life psychic medium who claims that he can communicate with dead acquaintances. He's written a new book. It's called Small Talk from Beyond, Speaking with Distant Relatives and Friends of Friends Who Have Passed.
Hi,
Good
Kenneth.
to see you. Now,
Thank you.
Kenneth, you've written that you're able to connect people with the spirits of their old college professors or roommates that they didn't really know that well. When did you realize that you had this gift?
Well, it was the day after my cousin's friend's wife's funeral. I was at home and I suddenly felt a